Chapter 1258. When Murong Yu successfully ambushed Li Shang and killed him, causing Li Chong to be extremely furious, the city lord's mansion of the White Sun City welcomed a big figure. It was Li Diyu's elder brother, Li Di, a super powerhouse of the profound sage realm. He was 2 realms higher than the city lord of the White Sun City, Fong Tianhe. Therefore, when Fong Tianhe learned that Li Di had come to visit, he personally invited him out. If Li Di was the 9th rank profound sage of the Blood Rain Mountain, Fong Tianhe would simply ignore him. Although both of them were profound sages, the treatment they received was much worse. This was because of their backgrounds. In the end, the Blood Rain Mountain was just a small force, and the strongest among them was only a profound sage. They didn't even have an ancient sage. However, the Heavenly Fiend sect was many times stronger than the Blood Rain Mountain. However, in terms of power, who could compare to the Holy Empire of Nine Yin behind Fong Tianhe? However, there were many people in the Holy Empire of Nine Yin, and even an ordinary soldier was a member of the Holy Empire of Nine Yin. For a force like the Heavenly Fiend sect, it couldn't be easier to kill Fong Tianhe. Therefore, Fong Tianhe didn't dare to be too presumptuous and offend Li Di. In the main hall of the city lord's mansion, Fong Tianhe sat on the main seat. Li Di just stood on one side of the hall and looked at Fong Tianhe with an indifferent expression. City Lord Fong, I heard that someone in the city lord's mansion is suspected of killing my younger brother, Li Di. Fong Tianhe's eyes flashed, and he said indifferently, he's just a servant, a first-rank sage. How could he kill Li Di, a great sage? A cold light flashed between Li Di's eyebrows, and an obscure killing intent burst out. City Lord Fong, I now suspect that Murong Yu is the one who killed my younger brother. I'm going to take him back for interrogation. Do you have any objections? Fong Tianhe flew into a rage. Li Di, you are too presumptuous. Do you still think that I'm the city lord of the White Sun City? Do you think that this is the Holy Empire of Nine Yin? Don't think that you can be arrogant just because you are a disciple of the Heavenly Fiend sect. The Heavenly Fiend sect is just an ordinary force in the Holy Empire of Nine Yin. Li Di quietly looked at the furious Fong Tianhe. After Fong Tianhe finished speaking, Li Di sneered and said, although the Heavenly Fiend sect is just a mediocre sect, it's still very powerful. However, I still have some influence in the sect. Do you believe that as long as I say the word, I can make you lose your position as the city lord of White Sun City, or even drive them out of the holy nation of Nine Yin? Fong Tianhe's expression changed abruptly, and a cold light flickered in his eyes. Li Di's words hit his soft spot. Although he was the city lord of White Sun City, his strength was not strong. Moreover, his family background wasn't that great, so the people he knew weren't very important. However, the Heavenly Slaughter sect was different. As long as they were willing, some big shots in the Nine Yin Holy Nation could strip him of his status as the city lord. One had to know that even though White Sun City was a small place, there were still countless people who wanted to be the city lord. The only reason he was able to keep his position was because he spent a large amount of resources every year to show filial piety to the people above him. City Lord Fong, I hope you will consider this matter carefully. Of course, I won't let you suffer. After you bring me back to the sect, I'll put in a few good words for you so that you'll have a chance to rise, Li Di said indifferently. Give him a carrot after a stick. Fong Tianhe's expression kept on changing. To him, his position was definitely more important than Murong Yu, an outsider. If he had to choose, he would definitely give up on Murong Yu. After all, even if Murong Yu's soul was really sanctified, would he be able to go against the Heavenly Slaughter sect now? Wait for him to grow. Let's not talk about whether that day would come. Even if there was such a day, it was still unknown whether he could wait until that day. Li Di didn't continue speaking and just looked at Fong Tianhe indifferently. He knew that Fong Tianhe would eventually agree. As expected, not long after, Fong Tianhe sighed and looked at Li Di, saying, I can hand over Murong Yu. However, he's now in the vast sea secret realm. When the time comes, your Li family can go and capture him. Our city lord mansion will definitely not interfere. I admire decisive people the most. City Lord Fong, I have high hopes for you. Li Di looked at Fong Tianhe with an admiring gaze, then took a step forward and left the City Lord mansion. At this time, Murong Yu, who was still fighting in the vast sea secret realm, didn't know that he had been sold. Once he left the vast sea secret realm, he would face the attacks of profound sage-level experts. It wouldn't even be just the Li family. These were all future matters. Murong Yu didn't have the ability to predict the future. At this time, he had already avoided Li Chong and appeared on a huge continent. According to Murong Yu's estimation, this continent was already the size of the Divine Realm's Dream Wilderness continent. At this time, countless experts were already on this continent. In fact, this was just a slightly larger island in the vast sea secret realm. As far as the eye could see, a series of incomparably huge auras of white light crisscrossed the continent, all of them shooting towards the depths of the continent. Could it be that a treasure is about to appear on this continent? Murong Yu frowned slightly and recalled Li Shang's memory that he had deliberately kept. Wandering Dragon Phoenix Medicine. Sure enough, Murong Yu found this sacred medicine in Li Shang's memory. These people's goal was this sacred medicine, because Li Shang and his brother's goal was also this continent. It turned out that this sacred medicine had a great background. In fact, it had already been discovered when the vast sea secret realm opened a few times. However, at that time, the Wandering Dragon Phoenix medicine hadn't matured yet. Moreover, there was a terrifying demonic beast nearby, protecting it. The most important thing was, if the Wandering Dragon Phoenix medicine hadn't matured, then it wouldn't have any effect. However, once it matured, its effect would be heaven-defying. As long as it was consumed and refined, it could directly raise one's cultivation by a small realm. Although it was only a small realm, how many people in the Holy World were stuck in this realm and unable to break through? How many peak ninth step great sage experts were stuck in this realm and couldn't break through for a long time and finally exhausted their lifespan? If they could obtain such a sacred medicine that could raise their cultivation by a small realm, then they could directly cross a large realm and reach the undying realm, becoming immortal. It was a pity that in the Holy World, there were simply too few sacred medicines and pills that could directly raise one's cultivation. They were simply priceless. This is good stuff. Murong Yu was also a little excited. If he could obtain this sacred medicine, then he wouldn't even need to refine items that contained such a large amount of energy to break through. He could directly break through to the Great Sage realm. I wonder if the sacred medicine has already been obtained by others. Murong Yu didn't dare to hesitate and quickly flew forward. Although the continent was huge, it was nothing to saints like them. Not long after, Murong Yu had already arrived at the central region of the continent and then stopped. He had no choice but to stop because there were already many experts gathered nearby. Rays of energy constantly shot into the sky. The weaker ones were at the Sage realm, while the stronger ones were at the Undying realm. Murong Yu even saw a few experts with dazzling light on their bodies. Undying realm experts. As for whether there were any profound Sage realm experts, Murong Yu didn't see any, but he kept his suspicions. In front of them was a valley that was about 1,000,000 miles wide. At this time, there was no one in the valley. No one dared to enter the valley. This was because the weakest experts around the valley were all high-level Undying realm experts. They hadn't moved yet, so how could others dare to enter? Otherwise, they would be crushed to death by a finger. In the valley, there was a plant that was about half a person's height growing there, swaying in the wind. Looking from afar, this sacred medicine transformed into a divine dragon that roared towards the sky. Then it looked like a phoenix expert, spitting out clouds and flames. This was the Wandering Dragon Phoenix medicine, a sacred medicine that could raise one's cultivation by a small realm. However, although this sacred medicine emitted a faint sacred light and a strange fragrance, it was still green. However, the entire stalk of sacred medicine was still green in color. Clearly, it had not matured yet. Of course, the fact that it hadn't matured yet didn't stop everyone from not daring to approach it. The reason why no one dared to approach it rashly was because of the monster beast that was hovering under the sacred medicine. To be precise, It was a distant relative of the dragon race, just like a flood dragon. A flaming fire lightning dragon. Although it wasn't a real dragon, it was definitely powerful. When Muronyu looked over, his eyes were almost blinded by the power of this monster beast that was only a few meters long. It was definitely an existence that surpassed the undying realm. However, this guy was now entrenched under the sacred medicine, looking like a harmless, ordinary monster beast. Muronyu dared to guarantee that among so many people present, there was absolutely no one else who knew how terrifying this monster beast was. A fierce battle? No, if the flaming fire lightning dragon erupted, it would definitely be a one-sided massacre. It was almost impossible for these people to snatch the wandering dragon phoenix medicine from him. Thinking of this, Muronyu couldn't help but retreat. He didn't want to get too close. Although the sacred medicine was extremely tempting to him, he didn't want to lose his life. However, he didn't leave this place. As long as there was a trace of opportunity, he would fight for it. Therefore, he lurked on a mountain peak. However, he just released Gongsun Ningyu from the Hichu Luo Shu. He saw more than a dozen figures shooting out from the crowd, rushing toward him with murderous intent. Those who came didn't come with good intentions. Could it be people from the Blood Rain Mountain? Muronyu felt depressed, because he had changed his appearance. Even if Fong Ziwen stood in front of him, she wouldn't be able to recognize him. Only the Blood Rain Mountain's blood curse would expose his identity. The Blood Rain Mountain is really a disgusting sect. Muronyu stood up and indifferently looked at the numerous disciples of the Bloody Rain Mountain, who were now closing in on him with murderous intent. Chapter 1259. Boom! Numerous disciples from Blood Rain Mountain rushed over. Without any hesitation, they threw punches at Muronyu and Jian Wushuang. Seeing this scene, the surrounding people all looked over. However, all of them were just watching the show. No one made a move, because they all knew that these people were disciples of Blood Rain Mountain. It was fine to offend anyone, but never offend the disciples of Blood Rain Mountain, because as long as you killed one of them, then you would be the enemy of their entire sect. No matter how you hid your identity, as long as you were within a certain range, you would be sensed by them. Therefore, as long as it wasn't someone who was strong or had a huge background, no one dared to offend Blood Rain Mountain. Muronyu protected Gongsun Ningyu behind him. His expression was indifferent, and he looked at the people who came with murderous intent. Who are you? Why are you attacking me? However, many disciples of Blood Rain Mountain just sneered at Murongyu's words. They looked at Muronyu with disdain, as if they disdained to answer Muronyu. In fact, the great sage who attacked suddenly sped up and threw a punch at Muronyu. You're courting death. Murongyu's eyebrows flashed with a cold light. He shouted and stepped forward at the same time. He also punched forward. Seeing this, everyone from Blood Rain Mountain couldn't help but sneer. The great sage who attacked looked at Muronyu with disdain. Little bastard, you dare to attack me. You're really overestimating yourself. Muronyu didn't speak anymore. He just snorted coldly. At the same time, the fists of the two people collided in the void. The great sage of Blood Rain Mountain looked ferocious. Little bastard, die. However, his voice had stopped abruptly before he finished speaking, because he didn't see Muronyu explode into a cloud of blood mist by his punch. On the contrary, he saw his fist and his entire arm explode into a cloud of blood mist with a bang. The great sage of Blood Rain Mountain was instantly stunned and couldn't react for a while. In fact, even if he experienced it personally, he didn't believe it, because this was too inconceivable. The others were also staring blankly, unable to react. However, it was just that they did not react in time. Murongyu's speed was not slow. After shattering the enemy great sage's arm with a single punch, Liu Yun's fist continued to press forward bravely. The great sage of Mount Blood Rain's heart was instantly enveloped by an intense aura of death. At this moment, he finally reacted. His figure flashed, and he was about to retreat. At the same time, he gathered all the energy in his body and formed a sturdy energy shield around his body. Die! Muronyu roared and fiercely punched his opponent's shield. Little bastard, let's see how you're going to break through my defense. The great sage of Mountain Blood, Rain, grinned maliciously. However, his smile froze once again. Because at this moment, a primal chaos flame that frightened even his soul had rushed into his soul. With a poochie sound, his soul was directly minced into 1,000,000,000 pieces, and he died instantly. After his death, his power naturally collapsed. At the same time, Murong Yu's fist also landed on the energy barrier. Suddenly, everyone saw Murong Yu's punch shattering the great sage's shield, and finally, it went straight in and blew up the great sage's body. A great sage was killed just like that, and the other party was just a first-order saint? Everyone was shocked, and they all looked at Murong Yu in shock, their faces full of disbelief. Kill! After blowing up the great sage of Mountain Blood Rain with a punch, Murong Yu roared again. With a teleport, he directly appeared in front of another great sage of Mountain Blood Rain and punched. Puff! At the same time, the huge primal chaos flame had already rushed into the other party's soul space, and before the other party could react, his soul had already exploded. With a bang, this person had been blown up by Murong Yu. Kill him. After 2 people were killed by Murong Yu in succession, the remaining people of Mountain Blood Rain finally reacted. With a person's loud shout, they all made their move. However, before they surrounded him, Murong Yu had already put them all on the must-kill list. Therefore, he absolutely would not be lenient. His figure swayed, and he disappeared on the spot. With a teleport, he appeared in front of the 3rd great sage and punched out. The soul attack took the lead to kill. Before he made his move, he had already annihilated the great sage's soul. Therefore, everyone only saw this person's movement stagnate, and then he was blown up by Murong Yu's punch. This kid's strength is probably similar to an ordinary great sage. But even so, he can't kill a great sage with one punch. Could it be that he has other secret techniques? Did you see that? Those people's movements were stagnant before they were killed by him. Maybe this kid has some secret technique in the area of space binding, and it imprisoned the other party's strength or movements. There was no lack of combat experience among the onlookers. Therefore, they quickly speculated why Murong Yu was so brave. However, they all guessed wrong. However, they couldn't be blamed for this. After all, there are far too few people whose souls have become saints. Boom, boom, boom. Murong Yu went on a killing spree, and his figure constantly flickered. Every time he stopped, the disciples of Blood Rain Mountain would lose their lives to him. Every time he killed a disciple of Blood Rain Mountain, there would be one more blood curse on his body. Seeing Murong Yu coming through time and space like an ancient killing god, their attacks couldn't do anything to the other party at all, but their own people were constantly being killed. The remaining disciples of Blood Rain Mountain were chill. Their faces were pale, and their hearts had already sprouted the thought of retreating. Since we can't kill you, then you can kill your woman. A disciple of Blood Rain Mountain sneered in his heart. With a step, he had already appeared beside Gong Sun Ningyu. He stretched out his big hand and quickly grabbed Gong Sun Ningyu. Ah, big brother, save me. Gong Sun Ningyu seemed to be very panicked. After screaming, she ran toward Murong Yu. Because Murong Yu changed his appearance, Gong Sun Ningyu didn't call out his surname. Die for me. The great sage of Blood Rain Mountain sneered when he saw this. His big hand quickly grabbed Gong Sun Ningyu in his hand. However, at this time, Gong Sun Ningyu suddenly stopped. With a flip of her small hand, a sword-shaped sacred tool appeared in her hand. Then, she stabbed straight at the great sage of Blood Rain Mountain who was rushing over. She must be scared silly. Otherwise, why would she be so stupid to fight with a great sage? Could it be that both of their strengths are so abnormal? Everyone pondered in their hearts. However, they felt that something strange had happened. The attack of the great sage of Blood Rain Mountain didn't stop, and he still quickly grabbed at Gong Sun Ningyu. However, his whole body pounced on the sacred tool in Gong Sun Ningyu's hand. Poof! The sharp sword directly pierced the great sage's chest. Ah! Gong Sun Ningyu screamed again, as if she had been stimulated. She grabbed the sword in her hand with both hands and began to shake it frantically. Waves of power continued to erupt from the sacred tool. Everyone suddenly saw that the great sage was actually turned into a cloud of blood mist by Gongsun Ningyu, without any power to fight back. Seeing this scene, everyone suddenly felt a chill on their back. It was very strange. Some people even involuntarily took a few steps back. They didn't dare to get too close. Run. The rest of the disciples of Blood Rain Mountain saw how terrifying Murong Yu and Gongsun Ningyu were, especially how strange Gongsun Ningyu was. How would they dare to stay? So, one by one, they used their fastest speed and quickly fled into the distance. Murong Yu didn't chase after them. He just glanced at the people around indifferently. Then, he took Gongsun Ningyu and flew to another mountain. There was no choice. The original mountain was filled with the smell of blood. They couldn't stay any longer. Brother Murong, should we leave first? There may be more powerful people coming to trouble us later. Gongsun Ningyu said to Murong Yu with some worry. Murong Yu shook his head. No one from Blood Rain Mountain will come to trouble us again. However, you did a good job just now. Murong Yu looked at Gongsun Ningyu and praised her generously. Gongsun Ningyu blushed and lowered her head in embarrassment. If it weren't for Brother Murong's help, I'm afraid I couldn't kill him. Just now, Gongsun Ningyu wasn't really scared. She just pretended to be scared. In fact, she had already launched a soul attack on the great sage while retreating. It was just that her soul hadn't reached the 1-star realm, so a round of attack didn't destroy the opponent's soul. However, at that moment, Murong Yu followed up with another attack, successfully killing his opponent. The reason why she pretended like that was just because she didn't want to expose the secret that she was a soul saint. Otherwise, once her identity was exposed, the powerhouses among these people would definitely take them away. After all, who didn't want their soul to become a saint? Next, no one dared to approach Murong Yu's mountaintop, and those powerhouses above the undead realm didn't even look over here. As for the disciples of other realms in Blood Rain Mountain, how would they dare to come up and die? Brother Murong, how do you know that they won't come to trouble us? Gongsun Ningyu asked puzzledly. If we weren't strong enough, there would be powerhouses coming out to kill us. But now they can't figure out our strength. Moreover, the most important thing is that the sacred medicine is about to mature. They don't want to be distracted. However, once the sacred medicine is over, the people of Blood Rain Mountain will make a move on us. So we must be prepared. It's really about to mature. The fragrance is getting stronger. And the sacred medicine has also become pale gold. Gongsun Ningyu glanced at the valley in the distance, and a look of as expected flashed across her face. Chapter 1260. According to legend, once the whole body turned golden, it would be the time for the wandering dragon phoenix congealed medicine to mature. However, no one knew how long it would take. It could be a few days, or even decades. Or it could be just a blink of an eye. Therefore, many powerhouses near the valley held their breaths and stared at the holy medicine with rapt attention. Once the holy medicine matured, they would immediately take action. They would kill a bloody path through the numerous powerhouses and finally seize the holy medicine. For a while, everyone here quieted down. No one continued to fight, seek revenge, or provoke. Now, nothing was more important than the holy medicine. The same was true for Murong Yu. He was already prepared to fish in troubled waters. However, at this time, a group of people slowly approached. When he saw these people, Murong Yu couldn't help but frown slightly. Because the person who came was an acquaintance, Fong Ziwen, the eldest daughter of White Sun City. While Murong Yu was frowning, Fong Ziwen had already arrived in front of Murong Yu. She looked at Murong Yu with a smile and said, "Young hero, I'm Fong Ziwen of White Sun City's City Lord's Mansion. I see that you're very strong and don't seem to have a sect. Are you interested in joining the City Lord's Mansion?" Hearing this, Murong Yu rolled his eyes. Was this woman addicted to winning people over? Winning over every person she saw? Immediately, Murong Yu's face showed an incomparably bright smile and said, "I'm not interested." Fong Ziwen's expression didn't change in the slightest. She glanced at Gongsun Ningyu indifferently and continued, "Your strength is not bad, but Blood Rain Mountain is one of the most difficult sects in White Sun City. I can guarantee that once the matter of the holy medicine is over, they will find trouble with you. There are profound sages in the Blood Rain Mountain. Murong looked at Fong Ziwen with a smile and said, "Eldest Miss Fong, are you threatening me?" Fong Ziwen still had a smile on her face and said, "How could Ziwen dare to threaten you? I'm just telling you the truth. As long as you join the City Lord's mansion, the people of Blood Rain Mountain will not dare to touch you. Moreover, even if you're not afraid of the Blood Rain Mountain, you still have to consider this beautiful sister of yours, right?" At this point, Fong Ziwen's gaze landed on Gong Sun Ningyu. "Little sister, you don't want to live in fear all the time, right? As long as you join the City Lord's mansion, this kind of thing will not happen." This woman knew that Murong was difficult to convince and actually targeted Gong Sun Ningyu. As long as Gong Sun Ningyu agreed, Murong might not continue to refuse. However, she guessed wrong about Gong Sun Ningyu's thoughts. Gong Sun Ningyu giggled and hugged Murong's arm. "I'll go with Big Brother. Wherever Big Brother goes, I will go." A black line appeared on Fong Ziwen's forehead. She was speechless. Murong smiled at Fong Ziwen. "Miss Fong, did you see that? We won't join the City Lord's mansion. Also, if the Blood Rain Mountain dares to provoke me, I'll make sure they don't leave." Sensing the killing intent in Murong's words, Fong Ziwen's heart tightened. She immediately sized up Murong seriously. Why does this guy look a bit like Murong? Murong could sense other people's hearts. At such a close distance, and with him deliberately sensing, some of Fong Ziwen's thoughts were directly reflected in his mind. After discovering Fong Ziwen's thoughts, his body shook. This woman can't have sensed something, right? Although I even changed her soul, it's hard to say if she doesn't have any special methods. Miss Fong, the sacred medicine is about to mature. I think you should go back. We've also made our preparations. Murong's smile disappeared as he indifferently replied. This was an order to leave. Fong Ziwen wasn't stupid. She immediately smiled and turned to leave. "Young hero, if you change your mind, you can find me at the City Lord's mansion after leaving the Vasi secret realm." At this moment, the sacred medicine in the valley was completely enveloped by a layer of faint golden light. It even enveloped the entire valley and seemed like it was going to soar into the sky. The originally green sacred medicine had turned into a faint golden color. It even had a faint sense of transparency. Waves of rich but fragrant aroma assailed the nostrils and enveloped the surrounding area. It made people feel as if they were in the 10,000 Flower Valley. It was so comfortable and carefree. When they smelled the rich fragrance, some people's realms began to loosen, as if they were about to break through. One could imagine how powerful this sacred medicine was. Even its fragrance had the effect of making people break through. Everyone's hearts shook. They knew the sacred medicine was about to mature. Roar! Suddenly, a deep roar came from the valley. Everyone's mind was shaken, and even their souls were on the verge of shattering. Everyone turned pale with fright and looked in the direction of the roar. But they saw that the fire spark lightning dragon, who had been hovering under the sacred medicine, had slowly stood up and stretched. The roar, just now, was probably just the fire spark lightning dragon's unintentional roar. Otherwise, with the fire spark lightning dragon's strength that surpassed the undead stage, there wouldn't be many people left alive with a single roar. After the fire spark lightning dragon got up, it slowly glanced at the many experts outside the valley. Then, its gaze stopped on the sacred medicine. "This bastard's eyes are filled with disdain. I'll kill you in a moment." An undead expert was enraged and said with killing intent, "Disdain, pure and undisguised contempt." They all felt that the fire spark lightning dragon's strength wasn't that great. At most, it was only in the undead stage, and there were imperishable realm experts in the crowd who could easily kill it. Therefore, these people were enraged by the fire spark lightning dragon's disdainful gaze. Only Murong understood that these people, even if they were undead stage experts, were just ants in the eyes of the fire spark lightning dragon. They were just strong and weak ants. But no matter how strong they were still ants in the end. This bastard is so greedy. It looks so greedy. The fire spark lightning dragon stared at the sacred medicine with glowing eyes, its gaze filled with greed. Everyone could even see sparkling and translucent saliva dripping out of his mouth. No one doubted that the fire spark lightning dragon would immediately swallow the sacred medicine the moment it matured. Therefore, the powerhouses were even more focused. Once the sacred medicine matured, their first opponent would be the fire spark lightning dragon. Time passed by continuously. The sacred medicine's original light gold color gradually turned golden. The exotic fragrance became even more intense. The sacred medicine is about to mature. Seeing the sacred medicine's color deepen, everyone became nervous. Ningyu, enter my treasure space later. Morongyu instructed. Gongsun Ningyu nodded. She knew her own strength and was very self-aware. If she stayed outside, she would only cause trouble for Morongyu. There was only 1% left that had not turned golden. Everyone stared fixedly at the Saint Elixir, and their palms were all sweaty. Boom! All of a sudden, it was like the end of the world. Countless terrifying forces erupted at almost the same time, shooting straight into the sky. Because in that instant, the sacred medicine had completely matured. Suddenly, the exotic fragrance that was 1,000,000 times stronger than before swept out in all directions like a tide. At the same time, a strange fluctuation was emitted between heaven and earth. These fluctuations combined with everyone else's, shaking everyone's realm. The sacred medicine had finally matured. The moment the sacred medicine matured, those experts who had already raised their strength to the limit and were staring at the sacred medicine erupted at the same time. In an instant, the sky was filled with various colors of sacred light. The air was exploding and the void was shattering. The terrifying power seemed to be tearing the sky apart. Waves of energy were like a storm, strangling the fire spark lightning dragon. The moment the sacred medicine matured, the fire spark lightning dragon opened its bloody mouth and bit at Yu Longfeng's sacred medicine. The distance between them was very close, and it would only take a moment for the sacred medicine to be devoured. However, at this moment, the sacred medicine suddenly emitted a wave of energy. It directly stopped the fire spark lightning dragon from devouring it. In that instant, the countless terrifying forces that could destroy heaven and earth had already tilted down. They crushed the fire spark lightning dragon. The fire spark lightning dragon was very angry, and it roared at the sky. Bang, bang, bang. The terrifying sound waves were even more rapid, with the fire spark lightning dragon as the center, quickly dissipating in all directions. Everywhere it passed, the forces that poured down exploded. They could not withstand a single blow. After these forces were exploded by the roar, the sound wave attack was not weakened much, but quickly dissipated in all directions. Suddenly, the people around the valley were in tragedy. Bang, bang, bang. These saints did not even have time to react before their bodies began to explode, turning into clouds of blood mist. Their souls were also annihilated the moment their bodies exploded. For a time, the crowd around the valley suddenly turned from a sea of people to only a few people. Most of them were killed by the fire spark lightning dragon's roar. This included some undead realm powerhouses and even high-level undead realm powerhouses. Although the rest of the people were not killed by the roar, they were all seriously injured. One by one, they quickly retreated with a horrified expression. As for Morongyu, at the same time when those saints attacked, he had already entered the Hichu Luo Shu with Gongsun Ningyu. Therefore, they avoided the fate of most of the people outside. But even so, Morongyu did not feel good, and his mind was almost shattered by the shock. After the roar, there were still some undead realm and undead realm powerhouses who were not killed. So the fire spark lightning dragon attacked again. However, this time, it stretched out its claws that were covered in dragon scales and grabbed at the air. Chapter 1261. The claws of the flaming fire lightning dragon were skinny and covered in brown scales. There were traces of electricity flashing on them. There were also traces of fire in the lightning. Lightning and fire were the two offensive skills of the flaming fire lightning dragon. As the claws reached out, streaks of lightning and fire spewed out, suppressing the surrounding void and causing it to explode. Even the void began to tremble. Bang, bang, bang. The claws had just reached out, but the power of the claws had already enveloped the entire valley. The expressions of the undead realm and undead realm powerhouses changed instantly. This was because they all felt a terrifying force crazily squeezing them from all directions at the same time. During this process, their strength and speed were suppressed to the point that they could not move. Some of the undead realm powerhouses could not even withstand the power of the claws. Their bodies exploded and they died an unnatural death. At this time, the flaming fire lightning dragon's claws had only reached out and did not even reach down. What terrifying strength! Murong Yu, who was in Hichu Luo Shu, suddenly changed his expression. Although he knew that the flaming fire lightning dragon was powerful, he could not help but change his expression when he saw it for himself. Those undead realm powerhouses did not even have the chance to escape before they were killed. The undead realm powerhouses were hundreds of times stronger than the undead realm. However, they were still suppressed to the point of spitting out blood. They staggered and fled into the distance. At this time, there were no more people around the valley except for those undead realm powerhouses. They were all killed by the flaming fire lightning dragon. Murong Yu also controlled Hichu Luoshu to retreat as far as he could. As he retreated, he happened to pick up the flaming fire lightning dragon's claws and clench them. Bang! Instantly, those imperishable stage experts let out a series of miserable shrieks as their bodies exploded one by one. Their bodies could not withstand the attack of the flaming fire lightning dragon, let alone their souls. Therefore, at the same time that their bodies exploded, their souls were also annihilated. Seeing this scene, Murong Yu was so shocked that his face turned pale. Immediately, he controlled Hichu Luo Shu to retreat again. However, the fire spark dragon's gaze almost made Murong Yu suffocate. Murong Yu was certain that the Firestar lightning dragon had indeed glanced at him just now. She even looked him in the eye. Murong Yu saw the disdain, indifference, and contempt in the dragon's eyes. In its eyes, Murong Yu was not even an ant. Perhaps because of this, even though it had discovered Murong Yu, it did not attack. Otherwise, with his terrifying strength that could instantly kill an imperishable stage expert, he could probably annihilate Murong Yu with a flick of his finger. I'm afraid I have no fate with this sacred medicine. Murong Yu wiped off the cold sweat on his forehead and retreated once again. This demonic beast was simply too terrifying. Murong Yu couldn't even fish in troubled waters. Big brother, did that demonic beast discover us? It wasn't until this moment that Gongsun Ningyu woke up from her shock and looked at Murong Yu with a horrified expression. Murong Yu nodded. In fact, Gongsun Ningyu didn't know that the Fire Spark Electra Dragon had killed some imperishable stage experts. Otherwise, she would have fainted from fright. Roar! After killing these annoying ants, the Fire Spark Electra Dragon let out a muffled snort, then slowly walked in front of the wandering Dragon Phoenix congealed medicine, slowly stretched out its claws, and grabbed the sacred medicine. This sacred medicine is going to be ruined by this guy. Seeing this scene, Murong Yu was very unwilling. However, he was helpless. If he also had the strength of the Fire Spark Electra Dragon, he would definitely fight for it. However, he didn't have that strength. Could it be that no profound sage experts have entered the vast sea secret realm? Could it be that this sacred medicine has no effect on profound sages? Murong Yu thought in his heart. At this moment, the Fire Spark Electric Dragon, who had been grabbing the sacred medicine, stopped. At the same time, it fiercely turned around and looked to the other side, growling again and again. At the same time, Murong Yu felt an incomparably vast aura rushing over from afar. Waves of power crashed into the void, causing layers of ripples to appear in the void. The strength of this aura was definitely not inferior to that of the Fire Spark Electra Dragon. Murong Yu's heart stirred, and he turned his head to look. They saw a dazzling ray of light that was like the sun shooting over from the distant horizon. The light was dazzling, It was the light of power. As soon as he saw this light, Moronyu knew that the strength of the newcomer was similar to that of the fire spark electric dragon. Roar. Perhaps because it felt the strength of the newcomer, the fire spark electric dragon let out a roar. Its figure slowly rose into the air, looking at the newcomer with a vigilant expression. After a moment, the figure of a man appeared in Morongyu's line of sight. Suddenly, it was as if two suns had appeared in Morongyu's line of sight at the same time, so intense and dazzling. A battle between two profound sages? A smile appeared on Morongyu's face, and Hichu Luoshu once again retreated, far away from the two of them. The attacks of these two powerhouses were not something that he could come into contact with. When a sandpiper and the clam fight, the fisherman benefits. Today, I should be the fisherman. You two go ahead and fight. It's best if both of you are injured. Moronyu thought in his heart, constantly urging the outbreak of the battle between the two. Whoosh! Morongyu's body suddenly stiffened, because just now, the man's gaze had shifted in his direction for a moment. Although it was only for a moment, it showed that the man had already discovered him. This made Morongyu somewhat depressed. Why is Hichu Luoshu not as strong as before? How could I be so easily discovered? It's not that Hichu Luoshu is not strong enough. It's that your strength is too weak and the opponent is too strong. No matter how strong Hichu Luoshu is, it still depends on your strength. Your strength is too low, and Hichu Luoshu can't completely conceal your aura. It's very easy for someone with too much strength to discover you. Hichu explained. However, this answer made Morongyu even more depressed. Bang! While Morongyu was feeling depressed, the two profound sage-level powerhouses started fighting. Morongyu didn't even have time to react before his whole body shook violently, and then, with a bang, he directly exploded. As for Gongsun Ningyu, she was completely fine. This was because Gongsun Ningyu had no relationship with Hichu Luoshu. Morongyu's injury was caused by Hichu Luoshu's overflow damage. Of course, this didn't mean that the others inside Hichu Luoshu wouldn't be injured. Once the overflow damage was too terrifying, they would still be annihilated. What terrifying strength! Morongyu once again sighed in his heart and controlled Hichu Luoshu to retreat again and again. At the same time, his physical body had reformed. However, he couldn't see the spark lightning dragon anymore. Even his divine sense couldn't reach them. This was because the impact of the power was too terrifying. His divine sense was crushed as soon as it reached them. Morongyu suddenly became worried. He had originally planned to take advantage of the chaos while the two of them were fighting and steal the sacred medicine. However, he couldn't get close at all. Damn, with them fighting like this, won't the holy medicine be destroyed? Morongyu's expression changed slightly. However, after thinking about it, he felt that he was worrying too much. Those two fellows also fought because of the saint medicine, so they naturally wouldn't spoil the saint medicine. Half a day later. Why is it getting weaker and weaker? Is the battle about to end? Morongyu's face revealed a surprised expression. They're very powerful. If they continue fighting, this continent will be sunk by them. I'm afraid they're already fighting in the sky or in a vast sea secret realm, Hichu explained. Actually, Hichu didn't need to explain. Morongyu also guessed in his heart. That's the best. We can take this opportunity to get the holy medicine. Thus, Morongyu controlled Hichu Luoshu to shoot toward the holy medicine. During this process, the aftershocks of the power became weaker and weaker. In the end, the aftershocks of the power were no longer dangerous to Morongyu. We're rich. These two guys are actually so confident that they can leave here. Aren't they afraid that I'll steal the holy medicine? Morongyu was extremely happy and quickly arrived outside the valley. The holy medicine that was shining with a golden light was still standing in the valley. Morongyu was overjoyed and controlled Hichu Luoshu to rush in. However, asterisk rumble. Asterisk as soon as Hichu Luoshu approached the valley, a terrifying power rushed out of the valley and swept toward Hichu Luoshu like a flood. Morongyu was startled and controlled Hichu Luoshu to quickly retreat. After he retreated, the power in the valley slowly weakened and finally returned to its original state. Those two bastards. Murong gnashed his teeth. He had thought that those two guys had really left without worry. It turned out that they had arranged countless restrictions and formations in this valley. If Murong hadn't reacted quickly, he would have already fallen into the formation. If it had been anyone else, even an undead stage powerhouse, they would have been killed. Looking at these formations, Murong estimated that even a profound sage powerhouse wouldn't be able to break through in a short time. Moreover, the reason why the two fellows were fighting elsewhere. If someone touched these formations and restrictions, they would definitely sense it. If it had been an ordinary person, it would have been impossible for them to break these formations and restrictions before those two guys returned and steal the holy medicine. However, Murong wasn't an ordinary person. Murong sneered in his heart, walked out of Hichu Luo Shu, and then stepped into the valley. Damn it! No matter how advanced, powerful, and terrifying your formations and restrictions are, I can still enter and exit them as I please. The formations and restrictions hadn't been touched. However, Murong didn't dare to be careless. He calmed his mind and carefully walked into the depths of the valley. At this time, above the sea, far away from the continent, the flaming fire lightning dragon and the human powerhouse were fighting fiercely, not knowing that the holy medicine they were fighting for was about to be stolen. Chapter 1262. Although Murong slowed down and was very careful, he soon reached the depths of the valley. However, they soon arrived at the depths of the valley, near the wandering dragon phoenix medicine. The closer he got to the Yulong Feng congealing medicine, the stronger the fragrance became. Even Murong realm began to loosen. This was just the fragrance of the sacred medicine. If he could swallow it and refine it, wouldn't the effect be even greater? Murong couldn't hide the excitement in his heart as he prepared to collect the sacred medicine. However, he didn't recklessly grab it with his hand, because he knew that the sacred medicine had a kind of power to protect itself. Previously, even the profound, sage-level, flaming fire lightning dragon couldn't swallow it. However, Murong had plenty of ways to deal with it. Although the sacred medicine had a resistance, it was only directed at the people who came into contact with it. So, what if he only took the sacred medicine into the Hichu Luo Shu? Murong smiled and brought out the Hichu Luo Shu. He wasn't afraid that the Hichu Luo Shu would trigger the formations and restrictions here, because there were no restrictions or formations in the vicinity of the sacred medicine. Presumably, the flaming fire lightning dragon was also afraid that the formations would damage the sacred medicine. Asterisk schwa. Asterisk as soon as the Hichu Luo Shu came out, it rose with the wind and floated above the sacred medicine. Perhaps it felt Murong's intention, but the sacred medicine, which was originally standing still, began to tremble slightly at this time. Even the golden light emitted from its body flickered. Hichu Luo Shu collect. Murong roared in his heart. Immediately, the Hichu Luo Shu opened a huge hole and directly rushed towards the sacred medicine. It wanted to collect the sacred medicine. Asterisk bang. Asterisk at the same time that the Hichu Luo Shu rushed down, the sacred medicine shook fiercely. Suddenly, a large mass of golden light seemed to explode, sweeping in all directions. Most of the power was divided into two parts, one rushing towards the Hichu Luo Shu. As for the other half, they locked onto Murong and swiftly attacked him. A hint of surprise flashed across Murong's face. However, he was already prepared. Before the golden light could reach him, he dodged to the side. However, just as Murong's figure stabilized, the Saint Herb trembled once again. After that, another terrifying energy erupted and charged towards Murong. Murong had no choice but to rush out again. However, the power of the sacred medicine once again blasted over. In the end, with the sacred medicine as the center, a terrifying power shot out in all directions. This force could even push away the fire spark electro dragon of the profound sage realm, let alone Murong. Even if they couldn't kill Murong, they would still be able to kill him. However, if he was pushed into those formations and restrictive spells, Yu would definitely die. This sacred medicine has spirituality? Yu was extremely depressed. He was currently teleporting again and again, but in the face of an all-around attack, he really couldn't avoid it. Moreover, apart from him, Luoshu was also sent flying into the sky. It should be known that the sky above the sacred medicine was also covered with various restrictive spells and formations. Yu gritted his teeth and stored Luoshu back into his body. At the same time, he stepped out and directly entered the formations and restrictive spells. However, things were not over yet. After he entered the formations and restrictive spells, the sacred medicine burst out with an even more dazzling golden light. Streams of power, phoenixes blasted out and blasted into the formations and restrictions. Yu was shocked. After a few teleportations, he rushed out of the valley. Just as he came out of the valley, the hundreds of millions of formations and restrictive spells in the valley had already been activated. Suddenly, a terrifying aura that could destroy the heavens and the earth erupted, strangling everything and annihilating the void. It shocked the heavens and the myriad worlds. Not to mention that Yu was just a sage. Even a profound sage would most likely be strangled into powder. This was not a joke. Yu was depressed. Wasn't this sacred medicine too difficult to get? Hichu, is there any way to take away this sacred medicine? Yu helplessly asked Hichu. Directly suppress it. Hichu's answer was straightforward. Yu's face darkened. If he had that kind of strength, he would have already suppressed the sacred medicine. How would he be in such a sorry state now? Then there's no way. Hichu also had no other way. Because Yu was now poor, he couldn't use any magical treasure to suppress it. Most importantly, there were countless restrictions and formations in the vicinity of the sacred medicine. Once they were triggered, the one who would suffer would be Yu. Big Brother Morong, since this sacred medicine already has spirituality, doesn't that mean that it already has a soul? Then, as long as we destroy its soul. At this time, Gong Sun Ningyu's somewhat weak voice sounded. Yu was startled, and then became ecstatic. Why didn't I think of this problem? Thus, Yu left Luoshu and entered the valley again. It wasn't that he wanted to hide, but that as soon as he entered the valley, the sacred medicine would release its power and activate those formations, soul extermination. When Yu arrived near the sacred herb, the ocean-like primal soul flames of primal chaos surged towards him. Golden light flickered on the sacred medicine's body, and a terrifying power erupted, wanting to kill Yu and block the soul primal chaos flame. Puff, puff, puff. The power of the sacred medicine was really worthy of being able to push away profound sages. Before Yu's soul power could enter its body, a large part of it had already been shattered. However, although the sacred medicine was powerful, because it had been caught off guard by Yu, a portion of the energy still managed to enter its body. This was because it didn't know where its soul was. Therefore, after Yu's soul primal chaos flame entered the sacred medicine's body, it scattered in all directions. However, what made Yu depressed was that the power inside the sacred medicine's body was even more terrifying than when it burst out. Most of the soul primal chaos flame had already been annihilated when it entered. However, there was still a part of it that successfully rushed into the sacred medicine's soul space. Perhaps because it had just gained spirituality, the sacred medicine's soul was very fragile. Although this part of its power was annihilated, a part of the sacred medicine's soul was still torn. Suddenly, the sacred medicine's power and reaction stagnated for a moment. Luoshu returned. At this moment, Yu seized this opportunity and covered the Luoshu that he had already summoned. With his swish sound, the sacred medicine was collected by the Luoshu. However, the moment the sacred medicine disappeared, the hundreds of millions of formations and powers in the valley were triggered at the same time. Moreover, what made Yu's heart jump was that after these formations and restrictions were triggered, all of their power bombarded the area he was in. My goodness! A look of horror flashed in Murong Yu's eyes, and in a flash, he entered the Hichu Luoshu. Then, he teleported out of the valley. The moment the holy medicine disappeared, the two profound sage-level powerhouses fighting in the sky above the blue sea, the blazing fire star and a lightning dragon, also sensed something. Their expressions immediately changed, and then they glared at each other, directly giving up on each other, and used their fastest speed to rush towards the continent. Rumble, Murong Yu had just appeared outside the valley. The power of the formations that had been triggered was strangling him. Murong Yu watched as rays of resplendent sacred light soared into the sky. A terrifying aura kept bursting out, and then he saw the whole valley being razed to the ground by the terrifying power. At the same time, two equally powerful and terrifying auras quickly shot over from a distance. So sinister, seeing the razed valley, Murong Yu felt a lingering fear, and at the same time, he was a little angry. Why were those formations attacking the sacred medicine? It was obviously the work of those two profound sages. They must have set up some kind of formation, and once the sacred medicine left its place, those formations would be triggered and attack the sacred medicine. Since they couldn't get it, no one else could. If it was someone else, even a 9th-stage profound sage, they might have been killed. However, Murong Yu wasn't an ordinary person. With a thought, Murong Yu teleported away from the continent. In the next instant, the flaming fire lightning dragon flew back. Seeing that the valley had been razed to the ground, the two men's faces turned gloomy and murderous. Primal chaos. If I find out who you are, no matter who you are, I will kill you. The human powerhouse roared in his heart. He was a 9th-stage profound sage. Moreover, he was an expert who had been trapped in this realm for countless years. If he could get his hands on the sacred medicine, he would be able to successfully break through and reach the ancient sage realm. Although profound sages were undying and indestructible super experts, who didn't want to be stronger? The stronger one was, the higher one's status would be. Strength was the pursuit of every cultivator. However, it seemed that he might have broken through to the ancient sage realm, but now there was no more hope. He had fallen from heaven to hell. The flaming fire lightning dragon was the same. He was also a 9th-stage profound sage, a super existence who was only one step away from entering the ancient sage realm. Roar! The flaming fire lightning dragon roared and charged towards the human race experts. The enraged human experts also needed to find someone to vent their anger on. Thus, the two of them began a fight on this continent. All of this had nothing to do with Murong Yu. However, not long after, people passed by this place. However, they never saw this continent again. Obviously, this continent had been sunk by the two 9th-stage great sages. From this, it could be seen how strong their anger was. Looking at the sacred medicine suppressed by Murong Yu on the ground, Gongsun Ningyu asked with a smile, "Big brother Murong, now that we have the sacred medicine, should we continue to search for treasures or leave the secret realm of the vast sea?" Murong Yu shook his head and said with a smile, "Neither. I will first refine this sacred medicine and increase my realm." Chapter 1263. After finding a small island to land on, Murong Yu hid the Hichu Luoshu deep underground. Then, he began to swallow the wandering dragon phoenix congealed medicine. The wandering dragon phoenix congealed medicine's weak soul had not been completely torn apart. Therefore, when it saw Murong Yu striding over, it became nervous. The entire stalk of sacred medicine began to tremble. Waves of fear continued to spread out from it. It even seemed to be begging for mercy. Murong Yu smiled faintly. "Now you know how to beg for mercy? You almost killed me before." As he spoke, Murong Yu's incomparably huge soul primal chaos flame surged out like a torrent, directly rushing into the suppressed sacred medicine's soul space. With just a light shake, the sacred medicine's soul was completely obliterated. In fact, the sacred medicine's soul could not be considered a soul. It could only be considered the embryonic form of a soul, except that it had spirituality. Therefore, Murong Yu's heart did not waver at all when he obliterated this kind of soul. After its soul was obliterated, the sacred medicine naturally calmed down, and it could be manipulated by Murong Yu. Murong Yu sat cross-legged on the ground, then opened his mouth and swallowed fiercely. Immediately, the sacred medicine that was not considered huge quickly shrank, and then was swallowed by Murong Yu. The sacred medicine melted in his mouth, and immediately transformed into waves of energy that flowed along Murong Yu's meridians and quickly spread to his limbs and bones. Everywhere it passed, Murong Yu's body was tempered. Murong Yu's strength was increasing at a rapid pace, as if it had been bestowed upon him. It was as if the power refined by the primal chaos furnace increased Murong Yu's strength. Rumble, powerful and huge energy quickly circulated and washed through Murong Yu's body. It washed every inch of Murong Yu's flesh and blood. With every bit of energy consumed, Murong Yu's strength increased by a bit. Murong Yu's powerful aura continued to emanate from his body. Then, it formed a strong wind that swept in all directions. The strong wind became more and more violent, gradually forming a huge tornado. As for Murong Yu, he was at the center of the tornado. Crack! Suddenly, a shattering sound came from Murong Yu's body. Then, an aura that was at least 100 times stronger than before suddenly erupted. Boom! After an explosion, the void around Murong Yu was directly shattered by the impact. Large areas of the void collapsed and spread rapidly into the distance. Great Sage Realm. Murong Yu couldn't help but let out a long howl. His cultivation base had finally broken through. However, although Murong Yu was excited, he did not immediately stop cultivating. Instead, he continued to sit cross-legged on the ground, consolidating his cultivation. As his realm continued to stabilize, the aura he exuded also gradually converged and finally disappeared. After his realm was completely stabilized, Murong Yu stood up. The Wandering Dragon Phoenix medicine is really magical. It can actually raise one's cultivation base by a small level. However, Murong Yu's face revealed a look of surprise. Previously, he did not believe that this medicine could really raise one's cultivation base. He just wanted to give it a try. However, now that it was right in front of him, he had to believe it. However, what made Murong Yu feel regretful was that the effect of the Wandering Dragon Phoenix medicine disappeared without a trace the moment he broke through. It was not consumed by him, but directly disappeared into thin air. It could only raise one's cultivation base by a small level. It was the same whether you were a false saint or an undead saint or other experts of a higher realm. He clenched his big hand, bang, bang, bang. Suddenly, the void around his fist was directly crushed by him. Murong Yu's face revealed a bright smile. My current strength is at least 100 times stronger than when I was at the peak of the 9th level Great Sage. If I meet a first stage undead saint now, I can kill him without a sneak attack. Although Murong Yu's soul was still a 1-star soul, it had not been upgraded. However, before this, his soul could kill a low-level undead saint. It was just that his cultivation base was still difficult to resist the attack of an undead saint. He would be easily destroyed or even killed. Now, Murong Yu's cultivation base had become stronger. He could at least resist the bombardment of a low-level undead saint. Murong Yu was more than capable of destroying their souls in the time it took him to launch a few attacks. Of course, if he met Li Chong, who was at the 5th stage undead saint, Murong Yu could only escape. However, he should not be as embarrassed as before. However, although I'm not their opponent now, my realm will quickly improve. At that time, I will trample all the enemies under my feet one by one. Murong Yu was not discouraged. Instead, he was full of confidence. He was confident in himself. Big brother Murong, where are we going next? After knowing that Murong Yu had broken through, Gongsun Ningyu was very happy. She looked excited, as if she was happier than if she had broken through. Let's return to the Holy World. Murong Yu said indifferently. The vast sea secret realm would be open for 10,000 years. Now, less than a third of the time had passed. However, Moronyu did not want to continue in the vast sea secret realm, although there were still a lot of treasures in the vast sea secret realm. However, Moronyu's luck would not always be so good. He would always encounter them. After reaching the Great Sage Realm and obtaining the soul-devouring pearl, Moronyu had already gained a lot from this trip to the vast sea secret realm. But before we leave, we still need to go to a place. With that, Moronyu was about to teleport. However, what made him depressed was that the teleportation point had disappeared. Could it be that the continent has been sunk? Moronyu guessed. He had already left Hichu, Luoshu, and shot toward the continent where he obtained the holy medicine. After breaking through to the Great Sage Realm, Moronyu's strength had increased by 100 times compared to when he was a 9th-rank saint. Naturally, his speed had also increased by 100 times. His angel wings spread open, and with a gentle flap, Moronyu's figure disappeared on the spot and appeared in the distant sky. This speed had completely surpassed that of a low-level undead realm powerhouse. Galloping at full speed, Moronyu quickly passed through hundreds of millions of space-time and finally stopped above the vast sea. Gongsun Ningyu came out of Hichu Luoshu and looked at Moronyu with a puzzled face and asked, "Big brother Moron, where is this?" "This is the continent where we obtained the holy medicine." Moronyu looked at the sea under his feet and frowned slightly. "Where is this a continent? It's clearly a sea. Could it be that this continent has been sunk by those two saints?" Gongsun Ningyu's face revealed a look of shock. Moronyu nodded slightly, and his soul was urged by him as if he was sensing something. But soon, a look of disappointment appeared on his face. "Big brother Moron, what are you doing here?" Gongsun Ningyu's face was full of confusion. "Refining the soul fragments, but I'm afraid these fragments have long been annihilated by the vast sea's water vapor," Moronyu said with some disappointment. While fighting for the holy medicine, countless saints were roared to death by the fire spark lightning dragon. Although these people's souls were shattered, they did not disappear, but floated between heaven and earth. Moronyu's original intention was to refine these soul fragments to improve his realm. With so many powerhouses' souls, even if it could not upgrade his soul to a 2-star soul after refining all of them, it was entirely possible for his soul to become much stronger. However, he did not expect the continent to be sunk. Naturally, those soul fragments were also annihilated by the vast sea. Just as Moronyu was about to say that he wanted to go back, a terrifying aura of death instantly shrouded his heart. Moronyu's heart was suddenly shocked. There was no time to react at all, and he directly entered the Hichu Luoshu. Then, with a thought, he directly teleported away. Boom! Just as Moronyu disappeared, a claw full of dragon scales slammed down from the sky. A terrifying power erupted, and suddenly, the vast sea within a radius of hundreds of millions of miles was directly crushed. However, no one knew how deep the vast sea was, and they could not see the bottom. Roar! A shocking roar came, and layers of ripples appeared in the void as if it was about to shatter. Then, a figure appeared out of thin air where Moronyu was just a moment ago. Who else could it be but the Fire Spark Lightning Dragon? At this time, the Fire Spark Lightning Dragon seemed to be very irritable, and it roared repeatedly. The aura on his body trembled even more violently, causing the surrounding void to tremble unceasingly. Whoosh! The withered dragon claws grabbed the air again, and it actually grabbed in the direction where Hichu Luoshu disappeared. However, Moronyu directly teleported, so how could it catch Hichu Luoshu? Therefore, it only caught a ball of air. "Human, you want to die?" The Fire Spark Lightning Dragon roared in its heart, and it was filled with murderous intent. Its hatred for Moronyu had reached its limit. Moronyu's rapid disappearance confirmed the fact that the roaming dragon phoenix medicine was stolen by him. From then on, the Fire Spark Lightning Dragon hated Moronyu. Moronyu had one more powerful enemy in the holy world. However, it did not matter, because Moronyu had already arrived at the exit of the vast sea secret realm. As for why he was teleported here and not directly out, it was because every person who left the vast sea secret realm had to pay a portion of the income to the City Lord's mansion. Although Muron-Yu did not have to pay, if no one saw him come out of the vast sea secret realm, but he appeared in White Sun City, wouldn't that be telling others that Muron-Yu had special means? Whoosh, whoosh. Muron-Yu and Gongsun Ningyu were directly teleported out and appeared at the entrance of the vast sea secret realm. Looking left and right, Muron-Yu pulled Gongsun Ningyu into the air and was about to fly away. Muron-Yu, please wait. Just after Muron-Yu appeared, a voice suddenly sounded. At the same time, an expert appeared in front of him, blocking his way. An undying realm expert. Muron-Yu's pupils abruptly shrank. Chapter 1264. What's the matter? Muron-Yu's face sank, and he looked at the undead stage powerhouse with some hostility. I am a guard of the City Lord's mansion. According to the City Lord's order, I will immediately take you to the City Lord's mansion to see the City Lord after you leave the Sea Secret Realm. The undead stage powerhouse looked at Muron-Yu with a calm expression and said indifferently, I'm also going back to the City Lord's mansion, so I don't need to trouble you. Muron-Yu narrowed his eyes slightly, and he was a little unhappy. What did Feng Tianhe mean? Was he sending someone to monitor him? Muron-Yu didn't know what Feng Tianhe meant at all, so he was very unhappy. The City Lord has ordered me to accompany you back to the City Lord's mansion. Muron-Yu, please don't make things difficult for me, please. As he spoke, the undead stage powerhouse turned and left. Muron-Yu frowned deeply, and a cold light flashed between his brows. Could it be that Feng Tianhe has already found out that his soul is sanctified? What is he going to do? Although he didn't know what Feng Tianhe was up to, Muron-Yu was bold and still flew back with the undead stage powerhouse. Of course, if Feng Tianhe was an undead stage powerhouse, Muron-Yu would have to consider whether to go back or not. However, he was confident that he could escape from the hands of Feng Tianhe, who is only an undead stage powerhouse, if Feng Tianhe really wanted to harm him. What Muron-Yu didn't know was that the moment he left the Sea Secret Realm, Feng Tianhe had already received the news that he came out. After receiving the news, Feng Tianhe hurriedly sent the news out. What's the matter, City Lord? On the way, Muron-Yu felt more and more that something was wrong, so he went up and asked. The undead stage powerhouse didn't even look at him and just flew all the way. However, his aura vaguely locked onto Muron-Yu, as if he was afraid that Muron-Yu would escape. This made Muron-Yu even more vigilant. However, after asking the undead stage powerhouse several times and ignoring him, Muron-Yu stopped talking, because they had already entered White Sun City. Feng Tianhe won't really do anything to me, right? Muron-Yu glanced at Gongsun Ningyu beside him and felt a little helpless. If he had known earlier, he would not have released Gongsun Ningyu from Hichu Luo Shu. However, when he thought about how Gongsun Ningyu's Saint artifact could withstand the full power attack of a peak imperishable stage expert, he relaxed a little. The City Lord is already waiting in the main hall. You can go in by yourselves. After bringing Muron-Yu to the front of the hall, the undead realm master stopped and said to Muron-Yu with an indifferent expression. Muron-Yu glanced at the man indifferently, then walked over with Gongsun Ningyu. He was not at ease, leaving Gongsun Ningyu alone outside. That was very dangerous and foolish. Whoosh, whoosh. The moment Muron-Yu stepped into the main hall, two powerful auras locked onto him. One of the auras was slightly cold and not very powerful. However, the other aura contained a terrifying murderous intent. The aura was very powerful and terrifying. At this moment, Muron-Yu's heart was immediately enveloped by a strong and terrifying aura of death. Even his whole body stiffened at this moment, and his soul seemed to tremble. Creak, creak. This was the sound produced by Muron-Yu's flesh and blood under great pressure. Even Muron-Yu felt that his bones were breaking inch by inch. Humph! Muron-Yu groaned in pain, and at the same time, he looked over. Sitting on the main seat was the City Lord of White Sun City, Feng Tianhe. At this time, He was looking at Murong Yu indifferently, without any fluctuations in his expression. In addition to him, there was a similar young man sitting on the side of the main hall. At this time, this young man was looking at him with murderous intent. That terrifying aura was suppressed by this young man. Profound sage. When he saw this young man, Murong Yu could not help but roar in his heart. The power radiating from this person's body did not reach the level of the flaming fire lightning dragon. However, it definitely surpassed Lu Haotsong, a powerhouse of the 9th stage undead realm. At the very least, he was a low-rank profound sage. However, apart from the flaming fire lightning dragon and another profound sage in the vast sea secret realm, Murong Yu had no interactions with other profound sages. So why did this person have such a terrifying killing intent towards him? The most important thing was that this person looked very familiar. Could he be Li Diu's legendary elder brother, Li Di? Murong Yu's expression changed, and a bad feeling welled up in his heart. Previously, he had relied on the prestige of the City Lord's mansion to suppress the Li family so that they did not dare to touch him. However, Li Di was so strong, and looking at Fang Tian's appearance, he was afraid that he was already prepared to send him out. You two, I have no enmity with you. So why are you treating me like this? City Lord Fang, I'm also a member of the City Lord's mansion. Could it be that you are just going to watch others treat me like this? Although Murong Yu was suppressed to the point that he could barely speak, he still looked at the two and said in a deep voice, Murong Yu, you're no longer a member of the City Lord's mansion. Li Di, I will leave Murong Yu to you. You can do whatever you want with him. Fang Tianhe glanced at Murong Yu with disdain and said indifferently. Murong Yu was furious. Fang Tianhe had already sold him out. Fang Tianhe, have you really expelled me from the City Lord's mansion? Let me tell you, you will definitely regret it. Fang Tianhe looked at Murong Yu indifferently and sneered. Murong Yu, you're just a mountain village kid, a mere sage. How can you make me regret it? Do you think you can continue to live? Fang Tianhe was also somewhat angry. Murong Yu's words had greatly provoked him. Hee, Murong, you kept sneering. Fang Tianhe, you will definitely regret it. There will be a day when you kneel in front of me and repent bitterly. Fang Tianhe was furious. Murong Yu, do you really think you're a green onion? You're just an ant. How dare you speak such arrogant words? If Li Di didn't want to deal with you personally, I would have killed you immediately. You don't know how to appreciate favors. Blind old dog. Murong Yu scolded Fang Tianhe. This feeling of being betrayed made him very unhappy. Moreover, the pressure that Li Di gave him was too great. He had to use this to disperse the huge pressure in his heart. Cut the crap. Murong Yu, are you related to the matter of killing my brother, Li Di? Li Di opened his mouth. His voice was cold like 10,000-year-old ice, piercing the depths of Murong Yu's mind. Murong Yu sneered. Are the people of the Li family brainless? How can I, a sage, kill Li Diu who is in the great sage realm? Cut the crap. Take me down and read your soul directly. Li Di sneered. If he didn't want to know who killed Li Diu, he was afraid that he would have killed Murong Yu directly. Why did he have to go through so much trouble? As he spoke, Li Di's big hand had already reached out. Suddenly, the terrifying power had already sealed Murong Yu's whole body. Then, Murong Yu was caught by Li Di's big hand and brought to the front of him. From the beginning to the end, Murong Yu didn't even have a chance to resist. This was the gap. The gap in strength between the two sides was too great. It was so great that he couldn't react. After catching Murong Yu in front of him, Li Di's divine thought rushed into Murong Yu's body and into his soul space. It quickly extended toward Murong Yu's soul space. Murong Yu didn't move, and there was no panic on his face. But he knew that once his soul was read, then Li Di would know many of his secrets, including killing Li Diu and sanctifying his soul. Killing Li Diu wasn't a big deal. It was fine if he was discovered, but the sanctifying of his soul and many other secrets couldn't be discovered by others. For Murong Yu, it was already a matter of life and death. Once it was discovered that he was a sanctified soul, he might not be killed immediately, but he would definitely be imprisoned. Until Li Di and the others studied the sanctifying of his soul, he would be killed. Seeing Li Di's divine thought rushing to his soul, Yu didn't move, didn't struggle, and didn't panic. On the contrary, he was very calm. It was as if all this had nothing to do with him. However, Yu was extremely nervous, but she couldn't even speak. This was because Li Di had already imprisoned her the moment he attacked, so she could only be anxious now. Seeing Yu's calm face, Li Di sneered. He thought that Yu was pretending to be calm. Even if you don't kill Li Di, you will still die. Li Di sneered in his heart. His divine thought had already touched Yu's soul. Boom! But at this moment, Yu's soul shook violently. It instantly turned into a burning soul chaos fire. Under Yu's control, these soul chaos fires spewed out like stormy waves, frantically strangling Li Di's soul. At the same time, the soul-devouring orb's ability was activated to the extreme by Yu. Suddenly, a terrifying soul-devouring power burst out, locking onto Li Di and frantically strangling him. The moment he made his move, the soul-devouring beast also moved. It turned into a stream of light and shot out from Yu's soul space, pouncing towards Li Di. In an instant, an aura of death enveloped Li Di's heart and soul. And the most terrifying thing was that 3 terrifying soul attacks had already rushed into his soul space. They were either strangling or devouring, coming menacingly with murderous intent. Li Di instantly felt the danger from his soul. If he couldn't avoid or shatter these soul attacks, his soul would definitely be strangled into powder. At that time, he, a dignified, profound sage, would be killed by a sage. That would really make everyone in the holy world laugh their heads off. Therefore, Li Di moved at once. His figure flashed, and his whole person fiercely retreated. He didn't even change his posture. He was still in a sitting position. However, the wall behind him was unlucky. It was directly smashed by him, and because of Li Di's collision, the entire hall collapsed. Chapter 1265. Asterisk boom. Asterisk everyone in the City Lord's mansion heard an earth-shattering noise erupt from the main hall in the center of the mansion. For a moment, the entire City Lord's mansion, and even everyone near it, was stunned. Some people even rose into the air and looked in the direction of the City Lord's mansion. Countless people near the City Lord's mansion also flew in the direction of the main hall. This was because they all thought that the City Lord's mansion had been attacked. The people who were originally near the main hall immediately saw that the tall and majestic main hall had collapsed with a loud bang. Then they saw several figures shoot out of the ruins and fly in different directions. 4 figures in 3 directions. Yu's soul attack had almost killed Li Di and several profound sage powerhouses. However, it was only almost. Yu's primal chaos flame had been discovered as soon as it entered his soul space. Although he discovered it in time, Li Di was still shocked. He was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. At the same time that the main hall was smashed, the terrifying power of the primal chaos flame had been used up in his soul space. The gap in strength between the two was really too big. Yu's primal chaos flame couldn't touch Li Di's soul at all before it was crushed into powder. A soul sage. Li Di cried out in alarm. A large amount of power poured into his soul space and firmly protected his soul. He was afraid that he would be killed by Yu again. His soul was very fragile, and if he wasn't careful, it would be crushed by Yu. He didn't want to die. Is it really a soul sage? When Yu killed Li Di, Fong Tianhe, who was sitting on the main seat, was shocked. When he felt the terrifying soul pressure, his soul trembled in fear. He even felt that if the person who was attacked was him, he would definitely not be able to escape and would be directly killed by Yu. It really is a soul sage. When he heard Li Di's exclamation, Fong Tianhe reacted. His face was full of shock, disbelief, and regret. He seemed to be regretting it. If Yu didn't die today, as long as he grew up, then even 100 Fong Tians wouldn't be a match for Murong Yu. After all, Soul Saints were extremely rare existences in the Saints world. In the entire White Sun City, or even the entire Nine Een Holy Nation, there were only a handful of Soul Saints. In the legends, which of the few saints whose souls had become saints after they had matured were not terrifying existences that could intimidate the heavens. Although he was shocked, Fong Tianhe still retreated quickly. He didn't want to be buried in the ruins of the collapsed palace. Although it wouldn't hurt him, it would still make him lose face. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. This is the time. At the moment when Li Di was scared away, Murong Yu instantly raised all his strength to the limit. While Li Di retreated, he also swooped down to Gongsun Ningyu's side. He stretched out his hand and was about to grab Gongsun Ningyu. You overestimate yourself. Li Di was worthy of being a super powerhouse in the profound sage realm. His reaction speed was so fast that it exceeded Murong Yu's expectations. While Murong Yu pounced on Gongsun Ningyu, Li Di's big hand had already shattered the void and grabbed straight down. However, how could Murong Yu's counterattack, which had been brewing for a long time, be destroyed so easily? When Li Di's big hand grabbed, he had already grabbed Gongsun Ningyu's body first. Bang! But at this moment, a huge force burst out from Gongsun Ningyu's body. The terrifying force directly shattered Murong Yu's big hand, which was unprepared. Murong Yu looked at Gongsun Ningyu in shock, only to see that Gongsun Ningyu also had a look of horror on her face. Obviously, this wasn't Gongsun Ningyu's trick, but Li Di's. It must be the power left on Gongsun Ningyu when he imprisoned her. Murong Yu was furious in his heart, and his other big hand grabbed Gongsun Ningyu again. But Li Di's big hand had already quickly grabbed over. Damn it! Murong Yu was furious and couldn't help but curse. He had to make a choice now, and he had to gamble. If he continued to grab Gongsun Ningyu, he would be caught by Li Di's big hand. After being caught this time, Li Di was already prepared, and Murong Yu basically had no chance to escape. And if he gave up on Gongsun Ningyu, he still had a chance to escape. And he was betting that Li Di would not kill Gongsun Ningyu. As long as he kept his life, as long as Gongsun Ningyu was not killed, Murong Yu still had a chance to rescue Gongsun Ningyu. In an instant, Murong Yu reacted, "Ningyu, I will definitely come back for you." Murong Yu roared, his figure flickered, and he teleported forward. Then, after several teleportations, he had already left Li Di's attack range. Finally, his figure flickered and disappeared in place. After entering Hichu Luoshu, Murong Yu did not stop and directly teleported away from White Sun City. Li Di was furious in his heart, and he snorted angrily. His big hand grabbed again and again, but it only grabbed a piece of the void, and there was no trace of Murong Yu. This made him very angry. To think that he, a super powerhouse of the profound sage realm, couldn't even stop an ordinary sage. This was really the biggest shame he had suffered in his life. Once this matter spread out, Li Di could no longer stay in the holy world. It was just that this was already the truth. And now he was basically sure that Li Diyu was killed by Murong Yu. Murong Yu was a sinister and vicious person, and almost even he was plotted against. Not to mention Li Diyu, who was only in the Great Sage realm. After confirming his guess, Li Di had new and old hatred for Murong Yu, and his killing intent towards him became even stronger. He wanted to chase after him, but he didn't know where to start. However, he soon looked at Gongsun Ningyu. "Will you come to save her? In that case, when you appear, it will be the time of your death." Li Di sneered in his heart, and directly sealed Gongsun Ningyu and took her away. Although it was somewhat shameless for a dignified, profound sage to use a sage to threaten another sage. But in order to take revenge, he couldn't care about his face. Moreover, Li Di had already lost all his face, so it didn't matter if he lost more. Seeing this, some people were puzzled. Was it because of Murong Yu's shout before he left that made Li Di detain Gongsun Ningyu? If it weren't for that shout, would Li Di have let Gongsun Ningyu go? In fact, this was not the case. Before this, Murong Yu had already fallen out with Fong Tianhe, the city lord. After Fong Tian knew that Murong Yu was a soul sage and had escaped, he would be worried about being retaliated by Murong Yu and would definitely detain Gong Sun Ningyu. Moreover, Murong Yu was worried about Li Di. If he escaped, would Li Di take his anger out on Gong Sun Ningyu? At that time, as long as he breathed, Gong Sun Ningyu would die. Murong Yu's shout seemed to push Gong Sun Ningyu into a crisis, but in fact, it saved her life in disguise. At least, before Murong Yu appeared, Gong Sun Ningyu's life was not in danger. Because Li Di still needed to use Gong Sun Ningyu to lure Murong Yu out. Before that, he would definitely protect Gong Sun Ningyu. Looking at the hall that had turned into ruins, Fong Tian's face was complicated, and his expression was constantly changing. He didn't know if it was regret or something else. If Murong Yu was just an ordinary soul sage, it was nothing. On the other hand, Murong Yu's soul was a saint. This kind of person didn't need to grow up to be able to destroy a mere White Sun City Lord. Murong Yu only needed to rely on a large faction or even a Nine Saint Nation. With his ability, he would definitely be heavily nurtured. At that time, Murong Yu wouldn't even need to make a move. Murong Yu only needed to casually say a word and Fong Tian's life wouldn't be guaranteed. While Fong Tianhe was in a daze and regretting, Fong Ziwen, who was in a sorry state, quickly flew back from outside. She actually didn't die in a vast ocean secret realms continent. It seemed like she also had a treasure on her. However, when she returned and saw the destroyed main hall of the City Lord's mansion, she was shocked. Could it be that someone dared to attack the City Lord? And looking at Fong Tian's appearance, he seemed a bit dispirited. Father, what's going on? Who attacked the City Lord? Seeing that Fong Tianhe wasn't injured, Fong Ziwen was relieved. But then she frowned and asked, "It's Murong Yu." Fong Tianhe laughed dryly and said in a deep voice, "What?" Fong Ziwen jumped in fright. "What's going on?" Although Murong Yu is extremely daring, he wouldn't dare to destroy the hall, right? I'll go teach him a lesson. Fong Ziwen was a bit confused and angry. Fong Tianhe stopped Fong Ziwen and said he already left. If he left, then call him back. Fong Ziwen still hadn't reacted. Fong Tianhe was helpless. He could only tell the whole story from beginning to end. Of course, at this time, they had already returned to another hall. "Father, you really shouldn't have done this. Do you know how heaven-defying and terrifying a soul sage is? Do you know how many soul sages there are in the holy world? If Murong Yu could grow up, his strength would definitely be terrifying. Even if he wanted to join the Nine Saint Nation, he would definitely be heavily nurtured. If that's the case, then what is Li Di and Heavenly Slaughter Sect? Do they dare to go against the Nine Saint Nation? Father, you've lost a lot for a small gain. A single slip will cause everlasting sorrow." Fong Ziwen's face was filled with resentment, and her heart was about to suffer internal injuries. She had never thought that Fong Tianhe would do such a thing during the time she was away. Offending a potential terrifying expert, their Fong family would be in big trouble. Now that things have already happened, it's impossible to salvage the situation. We'll just have to deal with whatever comes our way. Fong Tianhe was a bit regretful. Hearing Fong Ziwen's lecturing words, he was still a bit angry. After all, he was the father and Fong Ziwen was only his daughter. Chapter 1266. Soul-devouring beast, go back to White Sun City and protect Ningyu. Don't let anything happen to her, understand? While Fong Ziwen and her father were sulking, Murong Yu had already left White Sun City. At this moment, Murong Yu let the soul-devouring beast out and ordered it to protect Ningyu. The soul-devouring beast snorted heavily and looked at Murong Yu with dissatisfaction. Why did he want to protect someone? It wasn't a bodyguard. You're the only one I can use now, and only you can get close to Ningyu. Give me the latest news at any time. Murong Yu patted the soul-devouring beast's head and said indifferently, Ningyu would definitely go save her, but before that, he had to understand everything. Otherwise, when the time came, wouldn't it be sending itself to its death? And the soul-devouring beast and Murong Yu signed an equal contract. As long as they weren't too far apart, their minds were connected. Murong-yu even treated the soul-devouring beast as his eyes, sharing everything the soul-devouring beast saw. Most importantly, only the soul-devouring beast could sneak in. After all, this guy even treated Hichu Luoshu as nothing. Roar! The soul-devouring beast growled, expressing its dissatisfaction. However, Murong-yu didn't force it. It was just a request. Because it was an equal contract, Murong-yu couldn't force it. In the end, although the soul-devouring beast was unhappy, it still quickly left Hichu Luoshu and shot towards White Sun City. Murong-yu put all his attention on the soul-devouring beast. He only saw the soul-devouring beast swiftly flying across the road. It didn't take long before it entered White Sun City. Then, the soul-devouring beast directly charged into the Leaf family without hesitation, swaggering. Because of the soul-devouring beast's uniqueness, no one in the Leaf family could sense its existence. And the soul-devouring beast had an extremely heaven-defying ability. It was even more terrifying than Murong-yu just by looking at its aura. As long as it was a soul that the soul-devouring beast had seen, it would have a deep impression. No matter where it was, it would be able to find it. Of course, there were no absolutes in this world, and the soul-devouring beast was not omnipotent. There were still some places that the soul-devouring beast couldn't enter. After all, it wasn't strong enough. Thus, Murong-yu saw the soul-devouring beast swagger into the depths of the Leaf family. Then, it directly entered an extremely secretive prison and appeared outside a cell. During this process, the soul-devouring beast flashed past a few Leaf family experts, and those experts didn't even notice. Whoosh! After seeing Gong Sun Ningyu, the soul-devouring beast's figure flickered and turned into a stream of light, rushing straight into Gong Sun Ningyu's soul space. Seeing this, Murong-yu couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. He saw that Gong Sun Ningyu was not injured, but her power was sealed. In addition, the entire prison was filled with all kinds of formations. Anyone who approached would be triggered. In fact, Murong-yu even felt an incomparably powerful divine sense enveloping the prison cell at all times. It must be Li Di's spiritual will. Murong-yu frowned slightly. With the soul-devouring beast's uniqueness, it could easily avoid Li Di's spiritual will. However, Murong-yu couldn't enter. Even if he was in stealth mode, he would still be discovered immediately. As for the Hichu Luoshu, they could see the flaming fire lightning dragon, so it was hard to guarantee that Li Di couldn't. Didn't Gong Sun Ningyu have Murong-yu's teleportation point on her? As long as Murong-yu directly teleported in and put Gong Sun Ningyu into the Hichu Luoshu, wouldn't that be the end of it? Murong-yu also had this idea, but he rejected it immediately. In the City Lord's mansion, Murong-yu also wanted to put Gong Sun Ningyu away, but he couldn't touch her at all. It was definitely the same situation now. And who knew if Li Di had shrunk the space of this cell? If it was sealed, Murong-yu couldn't teleport in at all. Outside the cell, he would be knocked out of the void. At that time, once he was discovered by Li Di, it would be difficult for Murong-yu to escape. How should I save her? Murong-yu fell in a deep thought. At the same time, Gong Sun Ningyu, who was in the prison, discovered the existence of the soul-devouring beast. With Gong Sun Ningyu's strength, of course, she couldn't discover the existence of the soul-devouring beast. The reason why she could discover it was because the soul-devouring beast entered her soul space. At this point, as long as it was an ordinary saint, they could discover it, let alone Gong Sun Ningyu. The moment she saw the soul-devouring beast, Gong Sun Ningyu almost couldn't help but exclaim. However, she was a smart person. She understood in an instant and immediately continued to sit cross-legged on the ground without batting an eyelid. And, secretly, she was already communicating with the soul-devouring beast. However, what made her depressed was that she couldn't communicate with the soul-devouring beast at all. The soul-devouring beast knew what she meant, but she didn't know what the soul-devouring beast meant. Back then, Murong-yu could only communicate with the soul-devouring beast after signing a contract with it. After talking a lot with the soul-devouring beast, Gong Sun Ningyu saw that the soul-devouring beast only looked at her with innocent eyes. Then Gong Sun Ningyu understood, so she stopped talking. Because no matter how much she said, the soul-devouring beast couldn't answer. Soul-devouring beast, did Big Brother Morong ask you to protect me? Yes, it must be. I will definitely wait for Big Brother Morong to save me. But don't make Big Brother Morong worry. I'm fine now. After a long time, Gong Sun Ningyu suddenly said to the soul-devouring beast. The soul-devouring beast nodded, and a look of admiration flashed across its face. Then, there was no then. This guy closed its eyes and pretended to sleep. This made Gong Sun Ningyu speechless. On the other side, Morong couldn't think of a way to save Gong Sun Ningyu. I'm still not strong enough. Morong gritted his teeth. Li Di, a profound sage, was equivalent to a huge holy mountain pressing down on Morong head. Even if he was just floating there, the huge pressure could make Morong collapse. After the Great Sage Realm was the Undead Realm, and then the Profound Sage Realm. There was a gap of 3 realms between him and Morong. Cultivate first. Morong face was gloomy. But how could he improve his strength in a short time? Cultivation, physical body, and soul. These weren't things that could be improved just because he wanted to. Moreover, the gap between him and Li Di was so big. Senior brother, I heard that Morong soul is a sage realm existence. The old ancestor has personally said that our Blood Rain Mountain should do everything we can to find him. Is his soul really a sage realm being? Just as Morong was frowning, a voice came over. Morong eyes flashed with a cold light. Then he looked down through the Hichu Luo Shu and saw 2 youths rushing in the direction of White Sun City. Nonsense! One of our elders was personally attacked by Morong in the vast sea secret realm. How could it be fake? Moreover, it's not like you haven't heard of what happened not long ago. Li Di is a profound sage realm powerhouse, but Morong still managed to escape. If Morong soul isn't a sage realm being, then what is he? The disciple of Blood Rain Mountain, who was called Senior Brother Berated. It's just that he was able to escape from the hands of a profound sage. Can we still find him? The junior brother was depressed. You idiot. He had only caught Li Di off guard. Moreover, he's already seriously injured and can't escape far. Don't forget that he has the blood curse of our Blood Rain Mountain. Now that most of the disciples of our Blood Rain Mountain have come out, where can he escape to? However, now that the entire White Sun City wants to find Morong, we must find and capture Morong one step ahead of them, the senior brother said. Morong suddenly felt helpless. Now, as long as he appeared, he would be discovered by the disciples of Blood Rain Mountain, unless he left the White Sun City area. However, now that the disciples of Blood Rain Mountain were in the White Sun City area, as long as Morong appeared, he would be sensed. There was nowhere for him to run. So, Morong eyes flashed with a cold light, and an idea emerged in his heart. The 2 disciples of Blood Rain Mountain who were flying suddenly felt something and stopped abruptly. At the same time, they turned around and looked behind them. In the void that they had just passed, a youth was floating in the void, looking at the 2 of them indifferently. An incomparably strong power of the blood curse came from this person. In the eyes of the 2, Morong's whole body was flickering with a faint red light, as if he was a blood man. This was the power of the blood curse. Because Morong had killed too many disciples of Blood Rain Mountain, the more blood curses on his body, the more intense the bloody light on his body in the eyes of the disciples of Blood Rain Mountain. It was almost the same as the power light that Morong saw. Who are you? Seeing Morong's sudden appearance, the 2 men jumped in fright. However, when they saw that Morong was only a first-order great sage, they laughed. Both of them were in the Great Sage Realm. I am a member of Li family, under the order of my young master Li Di, to teach you a lesson. A trash sect like Blood Rain Mountain should get lost to Blood Rain Mountain as soon as possible. Don't get involved in Morong's matter. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite and directly destroy Blood Rain Mountain. Morong said indifferently. Hearing this, Both of them were taken aback, then looked at each other and laughed. However, their smiles soon disappeared, because they both saw that Murong had appear in front of them without them knowing when. At the same time, Murong fist had already bombarded the chest of the senior brother. Boom! The senior brother didn't even have time to scream before he turned into a cloud of blood mist. The junior brother of Blood Rain Mountain suddenly felt that his whole body was enveloped by a warm liquid. That was his senior brother's blood. Don't kill me. The junior brother was immediately frightened. His legs went soft, and he almost couldn't help but kneel down. Get lost. Go back and tell your Blood Rain ancestor not to get involved in this matter. Otherwise, our young master will kill you until your blood flows like a river, leaving no one alive. Murong shouted and kicked the disciple of Blood Rain Mountain away. Chapter 1267. What? Li family's brat is so arrogant? Blood Rain ancestor was immediately enraged after receiving the report from several disciples. His face was gloomy and murderous. Originally, when he found out that Murong was a soul-sanctified expert, he wanted to kidnap Murong, but he didn't expect that Li Di would beat him to it. He was determined to get Murong. Just when he was thinking about whether to snatch Murong from Li Di's hands, he found that Murong had escaped. A saint escaped from the hands of a profound sage. If he wasn't a soul sage, Blood Rain ancestor wouldn't believe it. Therefore, he immediately ordered all the disciples of Blood Rain Mountain to move and search for Murong in the vicinity. He had absolute confidence that he could capture Murong before Li Di and others found Murong. Because of the blood curse on Murong's body, no matter where he hid, he couldn't hide from the disciples of Blood Rain Mountain. But he didn't expect Li Di to be so arrogant. Not only did he directly kill the disciples of Blood Rain Mountain, but he also arrogantly said that he would destroy Blood Rain Mountain. He didn't put him in his eyes at all. Ancestor, now the people of Li family are wantonly killing the disciples of Blood Rain Mountain. They even threatened that as long as our disciples are active outside Blood Rain Mountain, they will kill them. What should we do? An undead realm expert of Blood Rain Mountain said with a face full of anger. If it wasn't for Li Di, Blood Rain Mountain would have already rushed to White Sun City and wiped out the Leaf family from the Holy World. However, if there wasn't Li Di, this matter wouldn't have happened, right? Even if there was Li Di, this matter might not have happened. After all, Murong is the mastermind behind this matter. Kill. Anyone who sees the Leaf family, and even those who are on good terms with him, must be killed. So what if it's Heavenly Slaughter Sect? The White Sun City is the world of our Blood Rain Mountain. The Blood Rain Mountain's old ancestor said with a murderous aura. His words were filled with killing intent. But Li Di, if he dares to make a move, I will directly kill him. So what if it was the Heavenly Slaughter Sect? Don't tell me you'll wipe out our Blood Rain Mountain for a dead person? Ancestor Blood Rain sneered, killing intent bursting out from his eyes. Thus, the disciples of the Blood Rain Mountain began to counterattack. While Patriarch Blood Rain was raging, many of the upper echelons of White Sun City's Leaf family had already gathered together. Like the upper echelons of Blood Rain Mountain, these people were also furious. Patriarch, what should we do now? Everyone was looking at Li Yongyuan, who was sitting on a main seat, but they were also looking at Li Di, who was sitting at the side. Nominally, they were asking for Li Yongyuan's answer, but in fact, he was asking Li Di. After all, the gap between undead realm experts and profound sages was simply too big. Li Di was now the one in charge of the Li family. Kill. Kill as many as you can. You're simply overestimating yourself. Li Di said indifferently, his face full of disdain. Although the Blood Rain Mountain was powerful, it was nothing compared to the Heavenly Slaughter Sect. He looked down on Bloody Rain Mountain from the bottom of his heart. Thus, under Murong's disturbance, the Blood Rain Mountain directly fought with the Li family. However, although the Li family had Li Di, a super expert of profound sage realm, overseeing it, but the others didn't even have a powerhouse of 9th stage undead realm. On the other hand, the Blood Rain Mountain had many super experts of profound sage realm. There were also many undead realm experts. Thus, after the two sides fought, the people of the Leaf family were quickly killed. In less than a day, the people of the Leaf family didn't dare to go out of the city, because when they went out, they were killed. Although the Bloodrain Mountain also had casualties, it didn't matter. The Leaf family was suppressed to the point that they retreated into the White Sun City and didn't dare to come out. The other families, and even the City Lord's mansion, didn't know what was going on and were all stunned. Only later did they know that the two sides were fighting because of one person. However, what they didn't know was that all this was started by Muronyu. First, he pretended to be a member of the Leaf family and crazily killed the disciples of the Bloodrain Mountain. Then, he pretended to be a disciple of the Bloodrain Mountain and killed many people of the Leaf family. He was the director of this scene. However, Muronyu didn't only need this. The climax of this movie hadn't started yet. I have to think of a way to lure Li Di out of the city. Muronyu thought in his heart, Bloodrain Mountain. Ancestor Li Di is hiding in the White Sun City and doesn't dare to come out. Why don't we just directly exterminate the Leaf family? An undead realm expert suggested to the Bloodrain ancestor. The others agreed. Since the two sides were already fighting, then they should directly exterminate them. Cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. However, it was different from these people who strongly wanted to exterminate the Leaf family. The Bloodrain ancestor's face was gloomy, and no one knew what he was thinking. He was the absolute controller of the Bloodrain Mountain because he was the one who established it. As the controller, he had a lot of things to consider. Although he said before that he didn't mind exterminating Li Di. But after killing Li Di, would the Heavenly Fiend sect really send powerhouses to take revenge? Then he and the entire Bloodrain Mountain would be exterminated, and no one would be left alive. He didn't want to die, and he didn't want his years of hard work to be destroyed. Therefore, he was a little hesitant at this moment. However, at this moment, a disciple came in and reported, Ancestor, elders, a disciple of the Leaf family brought a letter from Li Di and came to see the ancestor. He said it's an important matter. Let him in. The Bloodrain ancestor's eyes flashed with a cold light as he said indifferently. Therefore, the disciple of the Bloodrain Mountain retreated, and a great saint from the Leaf family walked in. Oof. Seeing that the person who came was actually just a great saint, many higher-ups of the Bloodrain Mountain were furious. Was the Leaf family looking down on their Bloodrain Mountain? However, because the ancestor hadn't said anything, although they were angry, they didn't dare to act rashly. You're the ancestor of the Bloodrain Mountain? The legendary Bloodrain ancestor? My young master wants you to immediately go to the depths of the White Sun Mountain range to discuss something. He's already waiting for you there, ancestor. The great saint from the Leaf family was arrogant. After coming in, he didn't even salute. Instead, he directly looked at the Bloodrain ancestor and said his purpose without fear. Seeing this, the anger in the hearts of the many experts of the Bloodrain Mountain rose with a whoosh. Wasn't this guy too arrogant? At this moment, they really wanted to slap this bastard to death. Remember, my young master will only wait for you for half an hour. If you don't wait after half an hour, you'll have to bear the consequences. The great saint glanced at the others in the hall indifferently, then turned and walked out of the hall. I'm so angry. An elder of the Bloodrain Mountain roared angrily. Killing intent burst out uncontrollably, wanting to kill the great saint from the Leaf family. However, he still didn't dare to make a move. Ancestor, is this Li Di's plot? After the great saint left, everyone looked at the gloomy Bloodrain ancestor. In the face of absolute strength, any conspiracy is vulnerable. The Bloodrain ancestor sneered. His figure flickered, and he had already left the hall, shooting toward the depths of the White Sun Mountain range. On the other side, the same thing happened in the Leaf family. After suppressing the worries of many higher-ups of the Leaf family, Li Di left the White Sun City alone and went to the White Sun Mountain range to meet the Bloodrain ancestor. He wanted to see what the Bloodrain ancestor was up to. After Li Di left the White Sun City, Muronyu also controlled the Hichu Luoshu to rush straight into the White Sun City, and then came to the Leaf family. Without Li Di, the Leaf family posed no threat to Muronyu. Therefore, he went straight into the prison, and the people of the Leaf family didn't notice anything strange at all. There were also a few disciples of the Leaf family guarding the prison, but they were only in the Great Saint realm. Murong Yu's soul attack could even kill an undead realm powerhouse, let alone these great saints. Therefore, these great saints were killed before they could even react. They died unjustly. Seeing the sudden death of the few great sages who were guarding outside the prison, the few people who were imprisoned in the prison were immediately alarmed. In fact, there were only 2 people in the prison. In addition to Gong Sun Ningyu, there was also a sloppy old man with extremely long beard and hair. Stepping out of the Hichu Lu Oshu, Murong Yu appeared in front of Gong Sun Ningyu's prison cell. "Big brother Murong, you're here?" Seeing Murong Yu suddenly appear, Gong Sun Ningyu was obviously taken aback, and then exclaimed in excitement, "Kid, if you save me too, I'll guarantee you a night of wealth." Before Murong Yu could boast, the old man across from Gong Sun Ningyu abruptly opened his eyes and said to Murong Yu, "Don't worry." Gong Sun Ningyu was startled, because she hadn't seen the old man move after entering these days. She thought that the old man was just a corpse. Murong Yu ignored the old man and just looked at the prison cell with a gloomy face. The prison cell was set up with many powerful restrictions. Even the walls were made of special materials that ordinary people couldn't destroy at all. And because of the various powerful arrays and restrictions, it was impossible to directly break in. However, these were not a problem for Murong Yu. He treated the arrays and restrictions as nothing. He was now thinking about how to unlock the seal on Gong Sun Ningyu and Li Di. Seeing that Murong Yu ignored him, the old man suddenly lost his calm. This might be the only chance he had to break out of prison. Immediately, he said again, "Kid, I know a Saint Crystal mineral vein. If you save me, I'll give you half." Murong Yu was still indifferent. The old man was anxious. "Kid, as long as you're willing to save me, I'll give you all of the Saint Crystal mineral vein. You must know that the Leaf family has been coveting that Saint Crystal mineral vein for countless years, and I haven't said anything. As long as you save me, you'll have a Saint Crystal mineral vein." Murong Yu was a little tempted, although the Saint Crystal mineral vein was of no use to him, because he had the Chaos Saint vein. But Shenzhen's people would ascend to the Holy World sooner or later. If there was a Saint Crystal mineral vein, it would be extremely beneficial to the early development of Shenzhen. However, who knew if this old man was just saying it casually? And the most important thing now was to solve the restriction on Gong Sun Ningyu. As long as he saved Gong Sun Ningyu, he didn't mind saving the old man. Chapter 1268. Young man, what do you think? Do you want to think about it? On top of that, in addition to the Saint Crystal load, I have many other treasures outside, all of which are definitely good things. If you can save me, I will definitely repay you heavily. Seeing that Murong Yu was tempted, the old man continued to entice Murong Yu. "Do you really have a Saint Crystal vein?" Murong Yu was not interested in other things, because he did not know what it was. The Saint Crystal vein was definitely something good. "Yes, good. If there is enough time, I can save you," Murong Yu replied. Then, with a flash of his body, he passed through the prison walls and entered Gong Sun Ningyu's cell. Seeing this scene, the old man's pupils shrank suddenly. Although there were only a few wooden pillars outside the cell, these wooden pillars were made of special materials and were set up with countless arrays and restrictions. Apart from using a key to open the door, there was no other way to enter. Of course, if one was strong enough, they could break the prison with a punch. However, Murong Yu was only a saint. Moreover, he'd passed through it as if it was nothing. He had the ability to enter the prison, easily kill the guards, and directly pass through the cell. The old man suddenly became excited. He felt that this time, he might be able to leave this place. However, at the same time, he was a little nervous, because he did not know whether Murong Yu would save him or not. If not, he could only watch helplessly. It seems that I need to add something to impress him. But he doesn't even seem to be interested in the Saint Crystal vein. What can I use to impress him? The old man thought in his heart and began to search his memory to see if there was anything more precious than the Saint Crystal vein. "Big brother Murong, Gong Sun Ning Yu was very happy. However, she still sat cross-legged on the ground motionlessly, because she also knew that there was a restriction placed on her by Li Di. Once it was triggered, it was possible to kill Murong Yu, just like what happened in the main hall of the city lord's mansion that day. Whoosh! After Murong Yu entered the cell, he immediately took out the Hichu Luo Shu. He had already considered this point. At this stage, other than using Hichu Luo Shu to forcefully collect them, there was really no other way. As soon as the Hichu Luo Shu appeared, it quickly expanded and covered the entire cell. At the same time, under Murong Yu's control, the Hichu Luo Shu opened a huge hole. It was like the bloody mouth of a prehistoric ferocious beast, or an incomparably huge black hole. An extremely powerful suction force was constantly emitted, causing the entire cell to tremble. By the time Murong Yu entered Gong Sun Ningyu's cell, Li Di had already reached the depths of the White Sun mountain range. Although he didn't have a specific location, with his strength, he quickly found Patriarch Blood Rain standing on top of a mountain peak. Seeing Li Di arrive so late, Patriarch Blood Rain's face turned gloomy. He felt that Li Di was trying to show off in front of him. Hee, Li Di, you're so arrogant. You asked me to come over, but you made me wait here for a long time. Patriarch Blood Rain looked at Li Di and sneered. Li Di instantly became angry. Patriarch Blood Rain, don't say such unpleasant words. What did I ask you out? Didn't you ask me to come over? At this point, the two men's expressions suddenly changed. They seemed to have thought of something, but they didn't dare to be sure. Not long ago, a great sage of your Leaf family came to my Blood Rain Mountain, saying that you were waiting for me here and had something to discuss. Wait. Li Di immediately interrupted Patriarch Blood Rain. Why would I ask you out? You're the one who asked me out. While speaking, Li Di waved his sleeve, and an image suddenly appeared in front of them. It was the great sage of Blood Rain Mountain who had sent Patriarch Blood Rain's message in the Leaf family's main hall. Moreover, like the great sage of the Leaf family, this person was extremely arrogant and insufferably arrogant. Seeing this, Patriarch Blood Rain already had a bad feeling in his heart. At the same time, he waved his hand, and an image also appeared. I didn't send anyone to Blood Rain Mountain, Li Di said in a deep voice. I also didn't send anyone to the Leaf family. They had been tricked. The expressions of the two changed at the same time. Obviously, someone had deliberately tricked them. However, they still believed it. The expressions of the two became more and more unsightly. In the end, who had tricked them? At the same time, a person appeared in the minds of the two, Murong Yu. If it was really Murong Yu who had tricked them, then was everything that had happened before also directed by Murong Yu? He had tricked them, two super powerhouses of the profound sage realm. Whether it was Blood Rain Mountain or the Leaf family, especially the Leaf family, many people had died because of this matter. The loss of these people didn't mean much to Patriarch Blood Rain and Li Di. After all, their lifespans were endless, and the people who had died would always be replenished in the future. The most important thing was that they, two dignified, profound sage realm ancestors, had actually been tricked by a sage. Murong Yu had concealed his realm, and they hadn't been able to see it. They had been tricked without knowing. They had lost a lot of face. What a disgrace. The two profound sage realm ancestors looked at each other and saw that the other's old face was red, and killing intent flickered in their eyes. While Li Di was feeling humiliated and angry, he felt that someone had touched the restriction he had placed on Gong Sun Ningyu. His expression instantly changed, luring the tiger away from the mountain. I have something to do, so I'll take my leave first. Li Di indifferently left the sentence, and then disappeared from the White Sun mountain range. Patriarch Blood Rain was taken aback, and then reacted. He also took a step and quickly disappeared. The Hichu Luo Shu had already covered Gong Sun Ningyu and was about to swallow her. However, at this moment, Gong Sun Ningyu's body flickered with holy light. Murong Yu's expression changed slightly. He knew that he had touched the restriction Li Di had placed on Gong Sun Ningyu. However, although he acted casually, his actions didn't stop. This was his only chance to save Gong's son Ningyu. Once he lost this opportunity, it would be basically impossible to do so in the future. Although he knew that Li Di was on the way back, Murong was still a little anxious. However, he became calmer and calmer. Primal Chaos Saint Vane, ignite, while raising his strength to the limit. The He-Tu and the Book of the Luo also started burning the Chaos Divine Meridians in order to increase the power of the He-Tu and the Book of the Luo to the maximum. However, the holy light on Gong's son Ningyu's body was getting stronger and stronger. An increasingly powerful aura was constantly being emitted. The holy light had almost enveloped Gong's son Ningyu's entire body. Boy, hurry up. I feel that there are powerhouses approaching quickly. I'm afraid that the powerhouses of the Li family have already discovered us. At this time, the old man in the cell opposite Gong's son Ningyu became anxious and urged Murong. How could Murong not know that Li Di was quickly coming back? Therefore, he only had a few breaths of time. If he couldn't save Gong's son Ningyu in a few breaths of time, he could only escape by himself. 5 breaths of time. Murong felt that Li Di would be back in 5 breaths of time. He had to save Gong's son Ningyu in 4 breaths of time and leave this place at the same time. He only had 3 breaths of time. Take her. Murong no longer hesitated. The He-Chu Luo Shu pressed down fiercely, wanting to take Gong's son Ningyu away. However, at this time, the holy light on Gong's son Ningyu's body skyrocketed. A terrifying power erupted like a flash flood. While blocking the He-Tu and the inscription of the Luo, it also frantically tried to strangle Murong. Plop! When this terrifying power erupted, the old man in the cell opposite Gong's son Ningyu was so frightened that he staggered and then sat on the ground. Who is this girl? The powerhouse who sealed him is actually so terrifying? Since when did the Li clan have such a powerful expert? The old man thought to himself in shock. As the old man retreated in fear, Murong let out a roar and threw a punch at him. Boom! Murong was ruthlessly sent flying by the force of the attack. However, perhaps because he didn't want to kill Murong or something, Li Di's power wasn't that strong. He only sent Murong flying and injured him. However, although Murong wasn't injured much, Gong's son Ningyu's entire body shattered, turning into a bloody mist that filled the sky. Is he here to save or kill? The old man was stunned when he saw this scene. Murong's punch actually blew up Gong's son Ningyu. Murong killed Gong's son Ningyu. However, what the old man didn't see was that when Gong's son Ningyu's body was blown up, a small phantom rushed into the He-Chu Luo Shu with a swish. At this time, 2 breaths of time had already passed. There was still 1 breath of time left for Murong. With a thought, Murong rushed out of the cell. He-Chu Luo Shu also turned into a stream of light and disappeared into his body. Don't resist. After Murong left Gong's son Ningyu's cell, he didn't hesitate to charge into the old man's cell. At the same time, he reached out to grab the old man. The old man was shocked. Just as he was about to resist, he heard Murong's words. Then, he gritted his teeth and gave up resisting. He was on a gamble this time. If he gambled correctly, he could leave the Li family's prison. If he gambled wrongly, he would die. In fact, if he couldn't leave the prison, he would only be living a life worse than death. Obviously, the old man gambled correctly. After Murong grabbed him, he wasn't killed. Instead, he disappeared from the cell with Murong. Teleport. As soon as Murong entered He-Chu Luo Shu, he activated the teleportation. Almost at the same time he entered He-Chu Luo Shu, Li Di's figure appeared in the prison. Whoosh! Before he could see what was going on, Li Di immediately made his move. His big hand grabbed the He-Tu and Luo Shu in the air. Chapter 1269. Bang! Li Di grabbed with his big hand, and a violent force gushed out. After an earth-shattering explosion, the entire prison collapsed with a loud crash. It was crushed in a fine powder by Li Di's terrifying strength. But where was Murong Yu's shadow? He didn't even touch the corner of Murong Yu's clothes. Li Di roared angrily in his heart, feeling incomparably angry. He had let an ant escape twice from his hands. And this time, not only was he fooled for a long time, but he also rescued Gongsun Ningyu under his nose. How could he not be angry? The sense of humiliation was getting stronger and stronger. Li Di was furious and couldn't wait to kill Murong Yu immediately. Pass down the order, do everything possible to inquire about Murong Yu. If anyone else has information about Murong Yu and confirms it, I will personally guide them on a few cultivation problems or give them treasures and resources. When Li Di's words spread out, the people in the entire White Sun City area were boiling. The fact that Murong Yu was a soul saint was not a secret to some forces in the White Sun City area. Even without Li Di's bounty, they would still look for Murong Yu. As for ordinary people, they didn't know that Murong Yu was a soul saint, but they were moved by Li Di's bounty. Li Di was a super powerhouse of the profound sage realm, and with his guidance, their cultivation might soar by leaps and bounds. Therefore, for a while, the powerhouses of the entire White Sun City were dispatched to look for Murong Yu, and Bloodrain Mountain was even more diligent. However, Bloodrain Ancestor was also depressed at this time. A dignified ancestor was fooled by a saint. How could he not be angry and vomit blood? Murong Yu didn't know about all this for the time being. Although he hadn't left the White Sun City area, he was in Hichu Luo Shu, isolated from the outside world. At this time, Murong Yu and the old man were looking at the void in front of them at the same time. A phantom was slowly condensing. Not long after, Gongsun Ningyu appeared in Murong Yu's line of sight. The current Gongsun Ningyu was no different from before. Big Brother Murong. After recondensing her physical body, Gongsun Ningyu walked to Murong Yu's side with a smile and held his arm, looking very happy. "Is your soul all right?" Murong Yu asked. Gongsun Ningyu quickly shook her head. "With the soul devourer protecting me, my soul is completely fine." Murong Yu nodded. It was good that he was fine. So he wasn't killed. It was only at this time that the old man who was rescued by Murong Yu came to a realization. However, his words were met with Gongsun Ningyu's big eye roll. "Why would Big Brother Murong kill me? That's just a way to save me." Gongsun Ningyu snorted. In fact, that was really one of Murong Yu's methods. One must know that Li Di's power would cover Gongsun Ningyu's body. Such a powerful strength was simply impossible for Murong Yu to break. The only power that could be broken was Gongsun Ningyu's self-destruction. Li Di's power only imprisoned Gongsun Ningyu's body. Therefore, after Gongsun Ningyu exploded, these powers were helpless. Moreover, when her body exploded, her soul was also taken away. Although Li Di's power was strong, it couldn't do anything to her soul in the Hichu Luo Shu. Of course, if Li Di's original body made a move, he might be able to kill Murong Yu and the others through the Hichu Luo Shu. But now, Li Di didn't have the chance to make a move. "Old man, I've rescued you. Shouldn't you fulfill your promise?" Seeing that Gongsun Ningyu was fine, Murong Yu looked at the old man next to him. The old man looked around and frowned slightly. "Is this place really out of the Li family? Your treasure space won't stay in a Li family's prison, right?" He was worried. If Murong Yu managed to trick him into giving up the Saint Crystal Lode and then threw him out, Yang Kai would suffer a great tragedy. Murong Yu's face suddenly turned gloomy. He looked at the old man with an unfriendly expression. Traces of dangerous aura emanated from his body, directly suppressing the old man. Murong Yu saw the old man's strength. He was an undead realm powerhouse, but it seemed that he was sealed by someone. His realm was only that of an ordinary saint. Here, Murong Yu could kill him with a thought. "Old man, are you going back on your word?" "Oof. I hate people who go back on their words the most." Gongsun Ningyu glared at the old man, her eyes flashing with disgust. For her, anyone who went against Murong Yu was a big bad guy and should be despised. Cold sweat dripped down the old man's forehead as he innocently looked at Murong Yu and Jian Wushuang. "I just wanted to confirm something. I can tell you for sure that we have left the Li family. In my treasure space, even if Li Di is a profound sage, it is impossible for him to find us." Asterisk Putong. Asterisk, the old man staggered and fell on his buttocks. He was scared out of his wits. You offended a profound sage powerhouse. And this person is from the Leaf family? The old man was almost scared to death. Do you think the Leaf family, which only has undead sages, would dare to touch me? Moronyu said indifferently, his tone full of confidence. The old man was still shocked. Although he didn't believe Moronyu and felt that he was too arrogant, he was able to enter the Leaf family's prison. However, the fact that he was able to enter the Leaf family's heavenly prison and enter an uninhabited area was enough to make him look at him in a different light. The St. Crystal Vein is in the depths of Tsangyan mountain range. The old man roughly told the location of the vein. In any case, he didn't intend to hide it. Since he promised to give it to Moronyu, he wouldn't regret it, although it was a bit painful. Tsangyan mountain range was one of the large mountain ranges in White Sun City. Although it wasn't as famous as White Sun Mountain Range, it was still vast. The vein is naturally in Tsangyan Mountain Range. Why can't the Leaf family find it? Moronyu was somewhat skeptical. The old man sneered, because the location of the vein is extremely secretive. I accidentally learned about it. At this point, the old man's face flashed with a touch of regret. Once I drank too much and said a few words, which was accidentally heard by the Leaf family. Then they plotted against me. The old man gritted his teeth and continued. Fortunately, I've placed a seal on my memories. If they dared to forcibly read my memory would automatically be annihilated. Therefore, I was able to live until now. However, if the Leaf family really has a profound sage powerhouse. The old man breathed a sigh of relief. It was absolutely not difficult for a profound sage powerhouse to read his soul. And once his memory was obtained, it would be the time of his death. Let's go to Tsangyan Mountain Range. Moronyu pondered for a moment, and then went out of Hichu Luoshu, although the outside world was now looking for him. As long as he didn't encounter an undead or profound sage powerhouse, he could still protect himself. The White Sun City wasn't the only city in the region, and not everyone lived in the White Sun City. In the area under White Sun City's jurisdiction, there were many small towns and villages. There were various sects and the like. Along the way, Moronyu passed by many sects, towns, and villages. Everywhere he passed, he saw that the people in these places were very excited and busy. However, Moronyu didn't have time to pay attention to these things. Otherwise, he would know that the reason why these people were so excited was because of Moronyu. Because at this time, Li Di's bounty had once again increased. As long as one provided information about Moronyu and was confirmed, not only would they receive guidance and rewards from Li Di, they could even be recommended to join the Heavenly Fiend sect. In addition to the Leaf family's bounty, Blood Rain Mountain also issued a bounty. Therefore, the people in this area were on the verge of going crazy. However, because Moronyu didn't encounter any disciples of Blood Rain Mountain along the way, even if he flew over some people's heads, they wouldn't know that he was Moronyu. Soon, Moronyu arrived in the vicinity of Tsangyan Mountain Range. Old man, where's the St. Crystal Vein? After releasing the old man and Gongsun Ningyu from Hichu Luoshu, Moronyu looked at the old man and asked. The old man's face darkened. Boy, don't you know how to respect the old and love the young? My name is 1E. You can call me Grandpa 1 or Elder 1. Uft, Moronyu and Gongsun Ningyu both spat at the same time. Then, the two of them looked at 1E with uncontrollable laughter. You're called Pestilence? 1E, not Pestilence. 1Yi's face darkened, but he was already used to it. Since he was young, people would misunderstand this name. However, this name was given to him by his parents, and he had never changed it. Wasn't it just a name? Make fun of him if you want. All right, old man 1, lead the way for me. Remember, don't mess with me, or I'll throw you back to the Leaf family. Moronyu threatened. 1E was instantly angered. You don't believe in my character? I really don't. Moronyu said with a smile. However, although he said so, he saw that although when he wasn't a good person, he wasn't a star-level villain either. As an ordinary person, Moronyu was just joking. Immediately, when he soared into the air and shot toward the depths of Mount Tsangyan. Mount Sanyan was neither big nor small. Soon, they reached the depths of Mount Sanyan. Then, when he stopped, "Old man, don't tell me that the holy vein is just ahead?" Muronyu looked at Wen-Yi with an unfriendly expression as he looked at the flickering buildings in front of him. A flag with a black dragon engraved on it fluttered in the wind. Between the buildings, there were saints walking back and forth. There was clearly a large sect in front of them. Moreover, it was a sect that Muronyu was familiar with, the Great Dragon sect. Wen-Yi smiled awkwardly. "You're right. The holy vein is deep underground in front of us." However, there was no sect here at that time. Muronyu held his forehead with his right hand and looked at Wen-Yi with a dark expression. "Old man one, how long have you been imprisoned by the Leaf family?" "A long, long time. I've forgotten." Wen-Yi's face turned red, and he was very embarrassed. Chapter 1270. Muronyu and Wen-Yi looked at Wen-Yi speechlessly. This guy had been locked up for so long that he had forgotten the time. How long had he been locked up for? Most importantly, the St. Crystal vein he had discovered was actually under the Great Dragon Sect's mountain. Perhaps the Great Dragon Sect had discovered it long ago. Or perhaps it was because the Great Dragon Sect had discovered this St. Crystal lode, which was why they had built their sect here. "Let's go." Muronyu glanced at the Great Dragon Sect and was about to leave. The Great Dragon Sect was not a powerful force and could not be compared to the Blood Rain Mountain. However, it was much stronger than the Leaf family and other families. Of course, that was excluding the Leaf family after Li Di. The Great Dragon Sect had an imperishable stage expert. Wait, they might not have discovered the St. Crystal vein yet, because the vein is deep underground. At this moment, Wen-Yi suddenly shouted, "Are you sure?" Muronyu stopped. Wen-Yi nodded with some uncertainty. However, his expression was a little ugly. Even if the St. Crystal vein had not been discovered, the Great Dragon Sect was above. If there was anything unusual below, it would definitely be discovered. In other words, the St. Crystal vein could not be mined at all, unless they just wanted to make a profit and leave. This is a problem. Muronyu pondered for a moment and decided to go up and take a look. If the St. Crystal vein was still there, they would slowly think of a way. If it was not, it would be useless to think of a way. Immediately, the three of them re-entered the Hichu Luoshu world. Although Muronyu had the art of invisibility, the Great Dragon Sect had an imperishable stage expert. If they were discovered, they would be in big trouble. Muronyu did not want to be hunted down everywhere. Controlling the Hichu Luoshu world and following Wen-Yi's instructions, they used half a day to enter the Great Dragon Sect. In the end, they appeared on a huge square in the Great Dragon Sect. There's a small hole over there. After walking around the square, Wen-Yi finally found a hole that was about the size of a person's body at the side of the square. There was nothing special about the hole, and there was no strong heaven and earth yuan qi leaking out. It was just like an ordinary crater. Craters like this were everywhere in the Saints' world. Under normal circumstances, no one would be so bored as to go down and take a look. "Is this the place? Are you sure?" Muronyu asked uncertainly. His spiritual sense spread out, but it reached the bottom very quickly. There was nothing below at all. "I'm sure it's down there. We won't be able to discover it from here. We'll know once we get down there." Wen-Yi's face was filled with confidence. When he saw the deep hole, a smile appeared on his face. Muronyu looked at Wen-Yi suspiciously. "Old man one, you're not trying to trick me, are you?" Wen-Yi's face darkened. "Why would I trick you?" Gong Sunding-yu looked at Wen-Yi warily. Big Brother Morong is so strong. He must have many secrets. Furthermore, this spatial treasure is so powerful. It's normal for you to be disloyal. Wen-Yi was enraged. "If you don't believe me, then don't go down. I won't force you. However, there really is a St. Crystal lode down there. If you don't believe me, this lode will be wasted. Consider it my gift to you. Then let's go down and take a look." Muronyu suddenly smiled, and with a thought, the Hichu Luoshu shot down. When he was stunned, he didn't know how Muronyu changed his mind so quickly. The hole wasn't deep, and the Hichu Luoshu soon reached the surface. "We're here," Let's go out. When he smiled confidently and was about to come out of the Hichu Luo Shu, Murong Yu naturally didn't refuse, and the three appeared at the bottom of the hole at the same time. When he glanced at the bottom of the hole, then took a step out and slammed into the boulder in front of him. Gong Sendingyu's mouth was wide open as she looked at Wen Yi in disbelief. However, she only saw a layer of ripples on the boulder, and then Wen Yi's figure disappeared. An illusion. Murong Yu's face showed a look of surprise. This illusion was of a very high level. If Wen Yi hadn't slammed into it, he wouldn't have been able to tell that this was an illusion. Perhaps this was why no one had discovered that there was another world here. Holding Gong Sendingyu's hand, Murong Yu also took a step out and slammed into the boulder. Then they felt the scenery in front of them change, and they appeared in a huge cave. Waves of heaven and earth essence chi, which was as vast as the ocean, rushed toward them and drowned the two of them. For a moment, Murong Yu and Gong Sendingyu seemed to have entered an ocean of energy of the world. There was no need for them to actively absorb or devour the energy of the world. The energy of the world drilled into their pores. The energy of the world here was more than 1,000,000 times denser than the energy of the world that Murong Yu had encountered in the Saint's world. This was because this was a Saint crystal mine. As they looked around, they saw streaks of white light that were constantly reflected in their eyes. Large and small pieces of white crystals were embedded in the ceiling of the cave, on both sides, and even on the ground below. This place was like a cave paved with Saint crystal lodes. Gong Sendingyu was completely shocked. Although she had seen many Saint crystals, she had never seen a Saint crystal mine before. Seeing the shock on Gong Sendingyu's face, Wen Yi's face showed satisfaction. Thinking back to when he accidentally broke into this place, his expression was similar to Gong Sendingyu's. However, what made him depressed was that Murong Yu's expression was very calm. It was only after entering this Saint crystal mine that he showed a slightly surprised expression. Could it be that he has seen a better Saint crystal mine? Or is he already used to this Saint crystal lode? When he thought to himself somewhat gloomily, he didn't know that this was Murong Yu's first time seeing a Saint crystal mine. However, he had many Chaos Saint veins. Although he could only use the Chaos Saint veins alone, they were still Saint veins after all. They were of a higher grade than Saint grade Saint crystals. Therefore, he couldn't be shocked by this Saint crystal mine. These white crystals are low-grade Saint crystals. There are mid-grade Saint crystals and even high-grade Saint crystals in the deeper parts. What do you think? Do you want to go in and take a look? Wen Yi looked at Murong Yu as he spoke, trying to see a look of shock on Murong Yu's face. However, Murong Yu disappointed him. Is this Saint crystal mine a high-grade Saint crystal mine? Murong Yu asked. However, his voice was very calm. Just like divine crystal lodes, Saint crystal lodes were divided into 6 grades. There were low-grade, mid-grade, high-grade, top-grade, and peerless. There was also the highest grade Saint grade. However, in the Holy World, low-grade Saint crystals were the most common, followed by mid-grade Saint crystals. However, even if it was just a low-grade Saint crystal mine, it contained extremely terrifying wealth. If a family like the Li family obtained it, as long as they were given time, their family would have an undead stage powerhouse or even a profound sage powerhouse. Apart from their own aptitude and secret arts, the most important factor that determined the level of a person's cultivation was resources. This was why there were so many genius powerhouses in the world, but why there were so many powerhouses from large sections. It was because large sects could provide high-grade secret arts and large amounts of resources. Powerhouses were formed by piling up resources. Just like Murong Yu, without a large amount of resources, even if his aptitude was heaven-defying, even if he had the primal chaos furnace, it would be impossible for his strength to increase so quickly. A high-grade Saint Crystal mine, let alone the Leaf family, even the Heavenly Fiend sect could not help but be moved and greedy. Wen Yi quickly nodded, then walked into the depths of the mine. Low-grade Saint Crystals, mid-grade Saint Crystals, high-grade Saint Crystals. This was indeed a high-grade Saint Crystal mine. If you give his Saint Crystal Mine to the 9 holy nation, you can at least become the city lord of the city like White Sun City. Are you really going to give it to me? Originally, Muronyu thought that this was just an ordinary high-grade Saint Crystal Mine, but along the way, Muronyu became more and more shocked. This was not a small mine, but a super large one. If he used it to develop Shenzhen, he could quickly develop Blood Rain Mountain to the same level of strength as Blood Rain Mountain, or even stronger. How many disciples did Shenzhen have? The unit was hundreds of millions. One could imagine how terrifying this mine's reserves were. This mine might be able to make me a city lord, but I don't like it. But the old man doesn't like that kind of life. I just like to be free. Besides, you saved me, so I'll naturally give you this mine. Do you think my life is not worth this mine? When he glared at Muronyu, Muronyu did not speak, but Gongsun Ningyu nodded repeatedly. This caused Wen Yi's face to darken. It's just a pity that even if I give it to you, you won't be able to mine it. This mine's reserves are astonishing, and it's not something that can be mined in a short time. Moreover, if you make a big move, the great dragon sect above will immediately know, Wen Yi said regretfully. It's fine, it's just the great dragon sect. After I reach the imperishable stage, I'll just chase them away, Muronyu said indifferently. In fact, he really did not care about it. With his aptitude, it would not take long for him to reach the imperishable stage. At that time, as long as he chased away the great dragon sect and built Shenzhen's sect here, it would be an ideal place. When he looked at Muronyu with a doubtful gaze, he did not believe it at all. If it was really so easy to break through, then the holy world would be full of super experts now. Forget it, forget it. Since my life was saved by you, I'll give you another good fortune. This old man doesn't like to owe favors. What fortune? A great fortune, a great opportunity. When he pretended to be mysterious, Muronyu and Gongsun Ningyu looked straight at him without asking anything. After a long time, when he said embarrassedly, I have a great opportunity. Legend says that the soul can become a saint. I wonder if you guys are interested? Soul Saint. Muronyu and Gongsun Ningyu could not help but exclaim. Chapter 1271. Soul Sanctification. Muronyu and Gongsun Ningyu were both soul sanctification experts. However, they became soul sanctification experts because of soul mutation, so they didn't have any cultivation techniques. Although Muronyu had the soul-devouring pearl and the soul-devouring beast, the soul-devouring pearl only strengthened soul attacks and had the effect of devouring souls. It had nothing to do with cultivation. If what he said was true, then they must obtain this cultivation technique. If they could have a soul cultivation method, their strength would definitely soar by leaps and bounds. If Muronyu broke through to 2-star soul formation, even a high-level undead realm expert might not be unable to kill him. Seeing the shocked expression on Muronyu's face, when he couldn't help but laugh, it turned out that there was something that shocked Muronyu. However, he didn't dare to keep them in suspense and slowly spoke. There is a dangerous place in the 9 holy nation, the Death Desert. Legend has it that even Saint Kings don't dare to enter the depths of the Death Desert. Even the holy nation's holy lord is deeply afraid of the Death Desert. Old man Wen, are you going to say that the cultivation technique is in the Death Desert? Muronyu interrupted Wen Yi and asked, if that was the case, what was the difference between going to the Death Desert and going to their deaths? What kind of existence was the holy nation's holy lord? The primal chaos ancestor sage. The strongest existence below the supremes. Even they didn't dare to casually enter, let alone them. The cultivation technique is indeed in the Death Desert. When he replied, Muronyu and Gongsun Ningyu's expressions changed. Then they looked at Wen Yi with disdain. Wen Yi ignored their disdainful looks and continued. I said that the Death Desert is extremely large. Because it is filled with danger, even the holy nation's holy lord's divine sense can't penetrate it. However, not every place in the desert is filled with danger. No, the soul cultivation technique is in that space that isn't dangerous. I went in by chance before. Speaking of this, Wen Yi's expression turned ugly. Why do you have so many coincidences? A soul attack cultivation method and a Saint Crystal load. Isn't your luck a bit too good? Moron, you looked at 1E and said indifferently. However, he also sympathized with 1E. Although this guy always encountered good things, these good things never had anything to do with him. The past is unbearable, so let's not talk about it. That cultivation technique is very powerful. If you want to go, we will set off immediately. Wenyi's face was a little gloomy, but he quickly changed the topic. Go, why wouldn't I? Moron smiled. Regardless of whether it was a soul cultivation technique or not, he didn't lose anything. He was going to leave White Sun City anyway. If we leave, what about the mineral veins here? Gongsun Ningyu was a little worried. When he smiled faintly. With the Great Dragon sect helping us to guard the place, what other method could be safer than this? It was unknown who had created a huge, illusory realm outside the mine. Not even a trace of heaven and earth yuan qi leaked out. As long as nothing unexpected happened, the people from the Great Dragon sect would not discover this mine. However, before leaving, they still collected a lot of Saint Crystals. After all, Saint Crystals were needed everywhere in the God Realm. Although Moron, you didn't need Saint Crystals, Gongsun Ningyu, and when Ying needed them. Moreover, Saint Crystals were a hard currency in the Holy World. Everyone had to have Saint Crystals on them. Otherwise, they wouldn't even have the chance to enter the city. After collecting a large amount of Saint Crystals, the three of them re-entered Hichu Luoshu and left Mount Serpentine with a teleportation. After leaving Mount Serpentine, when Eve brought Moron Yu and Gongsun Ningyu towards the Desert of Death. As for Li Di, Fang Tianhe, and the others, Moron Yu wanted to go back and kill them all. However, he didn't have the strength to do so. Therefore, they could only say that revenge is a dish best served cold. Although this was the style of a weakling, Moron Yu would return to White Sun City sooner or later. They would definitely take revenge. The three of them headed north. This was Moron Yu's first time leaving White Sun City to explore the Holy World. As he passed by more and more places, he gradually felt the vastness of the Holy World. For many days, the distance they had traveled had already surpassed the distance between the primitive continent and the demon-desolate continent. However, in the Holy World, they were still within the holy nation of Nainin. Moreover, they were still in Tranquil Sun Manor. The Holy World was divided by many superpowers. Every holy nation was made up of countless provinces. Every province had countless counties, and below the counties was the manor. White Sun City was one of the most ordinary cities in the Tranquil Sun Manor. A city of this level was insignificant in the holy nation of Nainin. During this process, Moron Yu and the others passed by several cities. However, they were all cities of lower level than White Sun City. They didn't come across another city of the same level as White Sun City, let alone a city of a higher level than White Sun City. In Tranquil Sun Manor, there was only one city of a higher level than White Sun City, Ping Sun City. Ping Sun City was the political center of Tranquil Sun Manor. The city lord of Ping Sun City was also the manor lord of Tranquil Sun Manor. Not only was he powerful, but his authority was also monstrous. Moron Yu and the others' target was Ping Sun City. Of course, they were still very far away from Ping Sun City. With their current speed, they might not be able to reach it even if they flew for tens of years. Therefore, they had to use the teleportation array. Originally, White Sun City also had a teleportation array. However, Moron Yu and the others didn't dare to go back. As for the other smaller cities, they didn't even have a teleportation array. Up ahead is Heaven Flame City. As long as we enter Heaven Flame City, we can use the teleportation array to reach Ping Sun City quickly. Then, we will teleport to Ping Sun City. In a few months, we will reach the Desert of Death. When he suddenly stopped and said as he looked ahead, from afar, a huge city that was even bigger than White Sun City appeared in their line of sight. However, it was different from White Sun City. From afar, the entire Heaven Flame City seemed to be in a huge brazier, surrounded by raging flames. The entire city can be barbecued? How can there be a master inside? Gongsun Ning Yu asked curiously. These aren't ordinary flames. They are heaven flames. The fire attribute energy contained in them is very rich. Therefore, it attracted a large number of fire attribute sages to cultivate here. Moreover, Heaven Flame City has a special method to prevent them from being roasted by the heaven flames in the city. Therefore, the experts in Heaven Flame City are much stronger than White Sun City. We have to keep a low profile. After reminding Murong Yu and the others, Wen Yi flew forward again. Before they got close, Murong Yu and the others felt a wave of fire rushing towards them. For a moment, it was as if they were in the middle of fireworks. Moreover, as they got closer to Heaven Flame City, they realized that the ground was on fire. The raging flames burned continuously, like a huge brazier. Even the surrounding void was filled with flames. With a light slide of his finger, sparks flew out from the friction in the void. In fact, if it streaked across the sky at high speed, flames would burst out of the void. Because the three of them were extremely fast, there was a long trail of flames behind them. The friction ignited the flames. Legend has it that a long time ago, Heaven Flame City was just an extremely small town. However, one day, the heaven flames suddenly descended and killed countless sages. Countless years later, an almighty built heavenly fire city in this place. In the end, it gradually developed to its current scale. Gongsun Ning Yu felt the surrounding heaven flames, but she didn't think much of it. These heaven flames don't seem to be anything. Why did they kill so many people? Wen Yi smiled and explained, what we see now are heaven flames that have been suppressed by almighty figures. Legend has it that if it's a real heaven flame, even a sage king could be easily burned to death. Ordinary people don't dare to get close at all. Gongsun Ning Yu's expression changed slightly. If the seal loosens or breaks at this time, won't we? If our luck is really that bad, boom. Before Wen Yi could finish his words, an earth-shattering explosion came from the Sky Fire City in front of them. It suppressed Wen Yi's words and forced him to swallow them back into his stomach. The three of them were shocked and looked up. They saw heaven flames spurting out from the ground in front of them. They even saw the enormous heavenly fire city being sent flying into the sky by the heavenly fire that was suddenly spat out. An incomparably vast and dangerous aura swept over from afar. Wherever it passed, the void seemed to have been set ablaze, burning rapidly. An intense aura of death instantly shrouded the hearts of Murong Yu and the other two. Our luck can't be that bad, right? Murong Yu and the other two instantly retreated, and Murong Yu said with a bitter smile. He was already prepared to enter Hichu Luo Shu. Otherwise, with their speed, they definitely wouldn't be able to retreat safely. Look, what's that? At this moment, Gongsun Ning Yu suddenly exclaimed. A huge green hand suddenly appeared below Heaven Flame City, holding up the enormous Heaven Flame City. Waves of power burst out and enveloped the entire Heaven Flame City. Because of this power, although the entire Heaven Flame City was blown into the sky, there was nothing strange inside. It didn't even tremble. One could only imagine how terrifying this huge hand was. After holding up Heaven Flame City, the huge hand suddenly flipped over and pressed down. Immediately, the raging heaven flames that were originally spurting out were quickly suppressed and retracted. During this process, Sky Fire City also slowly descended from the sky. Finally, it stood firmly between heaven and earth once again. The heaven flames were easily suppressed by the huge green hand. It wasn't just the heaven flames below Heaven Flame City, but all the heaven flames in this area were suppressed. Murong Yu and the other two were shocked. They were all stunned by the strength displayed by the huge hand. Chapter 1272. What's the level of strength of that green hand? Even the eruption of heavenly fire was instantly suppressed. Murong Yu's heart was filled with shock. Although the large hand had appeared in his line of sight, Murong Yu hadn't been able to see the radiance of power radiating from it. Perhaps it was because the green hand was not a real existence, but only a sealing power. Morong pondered. The green hand should be the Almighty who suppressed the heavenly fire and established Heavenly Fire City. Only that Almighty had the terrifying strength to suppress the endless heavenly fire with a flip of his hand. Are we still going to enter Heavenly Fire City? Gongsun Ningyu looked at Murong and one E with a pale face. After what happened just now, she was really scared out of her wits. Go, why not? We're just passing by. We'll leave after we teleport, Murong said with a smile. What if the heavenly fire erupts again? What if the hand can't suppress it? Won't we? Gongsun Ningyu said with some hesitation. How can there be so many ifs? If that's really the case, then our luck is really terrible. One, he shook his head helplessly, then soared into the sky and quickly flew towards Heavenly Fire City. Apart from the three of them, there were many others who went to Heavenly Fire City. Some of them were like Murong, stunned by the sudden eruption of Heavenly Fire City. Some had even retreated. However, most of the people went forward bravely, not afraid at all. What puzzled Gongsun Ningyu was that after what happened just now, no one in Heavenly Fire City fled. Although there were people who left Heavenly Fire City, there were just ordinary people who left. It did not seem like they were fleeing. Are they not afraid of death? Gongsun Ningyu was puzzled, but she still followed Murong towards Heavenly Fire City. After the eruption of Heavenly Fire, the surrounding temperature increased. Everywhere they passed, there were more flames. However, the void did not burn. Moreover, although the temperature of these flames was high, it was still within the tolerance range of a saint. However, the closer they got to Heavenly Fire City, the stronger the fire attribute power. Fire attribute Heaven, Earth, Origin Chi. Heaven Fire City was definitely a cultivation holy land for fire-type saints. An entrance fee of 10,000 low-rank saint crystals per person. The cost was extraordinarily high. However, Murong and the other two had plenty of saint crystals now, so they didn't care about this. After paying the entrance fee, they entered Skyfire City. How lively! Just as she entered Heavenly Fire City, Gongsun Ningyu could not help but cry out in surprise. Heaven Fire City was bustling with people, much livelier than White Sun City. Murong also discovered that Skyfire City was similar to a normal city. The temperature wasn't high because of the sky fire below. Even a false saint wouldn't feel uncomfortable living here. However, the fire attribute in the city was 1,000 times denser than outside. Let's go directly to the teleportation array and leave this place. When he seemed to have been to Skyfire City before, as he quickly led Murong and the other two towards the teleportation array. Just now, there was a burst of heavenly fire outside. Why are the people here fine? It doesn't seem to be affected at all. Gongsun Ningyu asked Murong in confusion. Murong shook his head. He didn't know the answer to this question either. Little girl, is this your first time in Skyfire City? At this moment, a somewhat old voice sounded. Murong and the others turned their heads and saw an old man with a red face looking at Gongsun Ningyu with a smile. Without waiting for Gongsun Ningyu to answer, he continued, Skyfire City is one of the safest cities in the holy world. Even if the sky fire erupts outside, it won't affect Skyfire City. This is because Skyfire City is the seal that suppresses the sky fire. You're saying that Skyfire City was used by that Almighty to suppress the sky fire? Murong cupped his fist towards the old man and asked. The old man with a red face nodded and continued. Indeed, the sky fire will erupt every once in a while. However, every time it erupts, the seal left behind by that Almighty will automatically explode and suppress the supreme sky fire. Although the sky fire is terrifying, it's far inferior to that Almighty. Since that Almighty can easily suppress the sky fire, why didn't he just annihilate the sky fire? Could it be that he just left it for the saints to cultivate? Or could it be that the Almighty couldn't annihilate the sky fire? Murong's rhetorical question left the old man speechless, not knowing how to answer. In fact, who knew the reason why that Almighty being had done this? Immediately, the old man smiled embarrassedly and said, The hearts of those powerhouses aren't something we can fathom. Since the three of you have come to Skyfire City, why don't you stay for a while? I have a house to rent, and it's definitely cheap." Hearing this, Murong Yu and the others couldn't help but stagger. This old man came over and said, "So much just to sell a house? How is it cheap? And what benefits do we get from staying here?" Murong Yu couldn't help but look at the old man in amusement. "It's definitely cheaper than staying in an inn. Moreover, our illusion is quiet and elegant. It only costs 100,000 low-rank St. Crystals per month." The red-faced old man immediately introduced his house with spittle flying everywhere. It was as if his house should only exist in the heavens and not in the mortal world. Murong Yu's face darkened as he looked at the old man with disdain. 100,000 low-rank St. Crystals per month? You might as well rob. Gongsun Ningyu and Wen Yi nodded in agreement. This price was enough to buy a house in White Sun City. However, the red-faced old man shook his head and said with a smile, "Wrong. We're even better than robbing. Even if you stay in an inn, you'll need 10,000 low-rank St. Crystals per night. Moreover, the inn's environment isn't as good. The most important thing is that the arrays in our houses are 100 times better than in an inn. Staying here for a night is equivalent to cultivating outside for a month." Seeing the puzzled looks on Murong Yu and the others' faces, the red-faced old man continued to explain. It turned out that Skyfire City was different from ordinary cities. Here, every building had been built when Heavenly Flame City was first established. Every house was connected to Skyfire City and was a part of the entire Skyfire City. These houses had one or more arrays in them. These arrays were directly connected to the sky fire beneath Skyfire City. These arrays had no other use except to purify the energy of the sky fire for people to cultivate. The energy purified by the arrays was not only suitable for fire attribute people to cultivate, anyone could do it. Moreover, it was countless times faster than absorbing the world's yuan qi to cultivate. It was equivalent to a spirit-gathering array. However, the things it gathered were much stronger than ordinary world's yuan qi. There were many houses in Skyfire City, but there were only so many houses with arrays. Therefore, as time passed, the prices of houses became higher and higher. Even now, even if you had money, you couldn't buy a house in Skyfire City. Because Skyfire City couldn't be expanded, even if they could build a house on the empty land, the later generations couldn't set up that kind of array. Is it really that good? Murong Yu looked at the old man doubtfully. The red-faced old man suddenly laughed. Skyfire City is famous in the holy world. Haven't you heard of it before? Murong Yu went silent. He had just ascended to the holy world not long ago, so he definitely hadn't heard of it. Although Gongsun Ningyu was a native of the holy world, her status was too low in the past. She didn't have the qualifications to know. As for Wen Yi, he was only in the undead realm before, so he didn't know. Moreover, after a period of time, the sky fire will erupt again. At that time, the energy purified by the arrays will be even stronger. Moreover, it's possible to enter the sky fire to search for treasures. Enter the sky fire. Murong Yu's heart stirred. The sky fire is so terrifying. Isn't entering the sky fire seeking death? Before Murong Yu could speak, Gongsun Ningyu took the initiative to ask her question. After a period of time, the sky fire will have a period of weakness. In addition to the almighty seal, ordinary people can enter the sky fire. Moreover, other than the energy that is more suitable for cultivation, there are many treasures. Every time, many people reap great rewards. Murong Yu's eyes narrowed slightly, and a light flickered in the depths of his eyes. To him, the energy that was suitable for cultivation wasn't very tempting. He had his eyes on the sky fire. He had seen the terror of the sky fire before. If he could refine this energy, his strength would rapidly increase. Moreover, he could use the sky fire's energy to temper his body. He had a chaotic celestial body, but his body was the same as an ordinary saint's. He had no advantage at all. He had always been looking for a way to raise the level of his body, but he had never found a suitable energy. Now there was a chance. How about it? I want to stay here for a while. What do you think? Murong Yu looked at Wen Yi. As for Gongsun Ningyu, he didn't need to ask. Wherever he went, Gongsun Ningyu would follow him. Wen Yi pondered for a moment, then nodded. Immediately, the red-faced old man led Murong Yu and Gongsun Ningyu back. The three of you, my surname is Yi. You can call me Old Man Yi or Elder Yi. May I know what level of house you need? The lowest level is also the one with the worst effect. It only costs 10,000 low-grade St. Crystals a month. The better ones only cost 50,000, and the best ones cost 100,000 per month. So greedy. Murong Yu and the other two were speechless. Murong Yu and the other two discussed for a while and finally decided on a better one, which was a medium-sized house. Then, they were led to an independent house by Old Man Yi. The house wasn't big, only a few hundred square meters at most. This also made Murong Yu and the other two realize what it meant to have an inch of land worth an inch of gold. 50,000 low-grade St. Crystals was enough to buy a mansion in White Sun City, and it was a permanent residence. But here, 50,000 St. Crystals could only be used for a month. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.